When a husband's silence becomes louder than any accusation, and a wife's red dress becomes the final warning before everything shatters. How many words does it take to destroy a marriage built on control? Tonight, you'll witness the brutal unraveling of Ethan and Lena Voss, a couple who mastered everything except honest conversation. This is the story of two people trapped in the same penthouse, but living in completely different prisons. Stay with me until the end to see if love can survive its own silence. Like this video, comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. And let's begin. Baba? The ice in Ethan Voss's whiskey had melted an hour ago. He sat in the leather armchair, positioned at an angle to the floor-to-ceiling windows, his posture rigid despite the chair's expensive comfort. Below, the city sprawled in a grid of light and shadow, indifferent to the 34th floor and the man who owned a significant portion of what glittered down there. His glass rested on the side table, condensation pooling beneath it, the amber liquid diluted to the color of weak tea. He hadn't taken a sip since pouring it, hadn't moved except to breathe. The penthouse around him was a study in controlled elegance, all clean lines and muted tones, surfaces that reflected wealth without warmth. Gray marble, chrome fixtures, abstract art that cost more than most people's homes but said absolutely nothing. It looked like the cover of an architecture magazine. It felt like a mausoleum. Ethan checked his watch. 8:47. She would come down soon. She always did eventually. 3 weeks. 21 days of existing in the same space without truly occupying it together. They moved through the penthouse like ghosts haunting different centuries, their paths carefully calibrated to avoid collision. He left for the office before she woke. She retired to her studio or the guest suite before he returned. When they did overlap, passing in hallways, reaching for coffee in the kitchen, the air between them went thin and strange, like the atmosphere at high altitude where nothing survives. He told himself it was temporary, a rough patch. All marriages had them. He told himself he was waiting for the right moment to address it. He told himself a lot of things that tasted like lies, even as he thought them. The sound of her door opening echoed down from the second floor. Ethan's jaw tightened. He kept his eyes on the window, on the city, on anything except the staircase. His reflection stared back at him from the glass. Sharp suit, sharper features, dark hair showing the first hints of silver at the temples. 36 years old and looking exactly like what he was. A man who had conquered industries and balance sheets, but couldn't figure out what was breaking in his own home. Her footsteps on the stairs were deliberate. Not rushed, not hesitant, each step measured. He waited until she reached the landing before he allowed himself to look. The impact was immediate and visceral. Lena descended the final steps in a dress the color of arterial blood, a deep, startling crimson that clung to her frame like a second skin before flaring slightly at the knees. Sleeveless, backless, the kind of dress that didn't apologize for existing. Her dark hair was pulled back in a way that emphasized the elegant line of her neck and the defiant set of her jaw. Minimal jewelry, dark lips, eyes that looked past him like he was part of the furniture. She moved through the living room with the fluid grace that had first caught his attention 4 years ago at a gallery opening, back when her smiles came easy and her laugh could fill a room. Now she walked like she was alone, picked up her clutch from the console table, checked her phone, all without a single glance in his direction. Something hot and jagged twisted in Ethan's chest. "Where are you going?" His voice came out harder than intended. Not a question, an interrogation. Lena paused. For a second, he thought she might ignore him entirely, just walk out the door and let it close on whatever this had become. Instead, she turned, finally meeting his eyes with an expression that held nothing. No anger, no warmth, just a polite blankness that was somehow worse than either. Out. One word, delivered with the same inflection she might use to read a grocery list. Ethan stood. The movement felt too sharp, too aggressive, but he couldn't stop it. Out where? Does it matter? You're my wife. Am I? The question was soft, clinical, like she was testing a hypothesis. I wasn't sure you'd noticed. The words landed like a slap. Ethan felt his control, the thing he prized above almost everything else, begin to fray at the edges. What's that supposed to mean? Lena tilted her head slightly, studying him with the detached interest of a scientist observing a specimen. It means you haven't spoken to me in 3 weeks, Ethan. Actual conversation, not logistics about bill payments or whether the housekeeper came. You look through me like I'm not here. So forgive me if I'm unclear on what being your wife actually entails at this point. That's not. He stopped, started again. I've been busy. Work has been work. She said it like the word tasted bad. Right, work. You know the merger has been complicated. The board is. I don't care about the board. The first hint of emotion cracked through her composure. Not anger exactly, but something rawer. Exhaustion, maybe. I don't care about the merger or the quarterly reports or whatever crisis kept you at the office until midnight every single day this month. I care that you stopped seeing me, that you turned into this wall, this silence. Ethan's hands flexed at his sides. If you had something to say, you could have said it. Could I? Lena's laugh was bitter and brief. When, Ethan? Between your morning calls and your evening scotch? During the 10 minutes you're actually in the same room with me before finding an excuse to leave? When exactly was I supposed to have this conversation? You're having it now. Because I'm walking out the door. That's what it takes. Me in a dress you clearly hate, going somewhere you don't know, to finally get a reaction out of you. He stepped closer, the space between them charging with something electric and unpleasant. I don't hate the dress. You looked at me like I was betraying you by wearing it. It's revealing. It's clothing. It's a statement. Yes. Her eyes flashed. It is. It's me stating that I still exist, that I'm still a person who can put on a dress and feel something other than invisible. The words hit him like a fist to the sternum. Invisible. Was that what she felt? In their home, in their marriage, in the life he'd built for them, did she feel unseen? His voice dropped lower, more controlled, the tone he used in boardrooms when he needed to dominate. Who are you trying to be visible for? Lena went very still. Excuse me? The dress. The makeup. You're going out alone in the middle of the week looking like. He gestured vaguely, unable to finish the sentence without saying something unforgivable. Like what? Her voice was dangerously quiet. Say it, Ethan. Like what? Like you're trying to prove something. I'm trying to prove something. I'm trying to prove to myself that I'm not dead inside, that I can still feel my own skin, that I matter to someone, even if it's just me. You matter to me. The words came out strained. Do I? She searched his face like she was looking for evidence, like his features were a text she could no longer read. Because 3 weeks ago you stopped touching me, stopped talking to me, stopped existing with me in any meaningful way. And the only explanation that makes sense is that you don't want me anymore. So yes, Ethan, I put on a dress, I did my makeup, I'm going out. And if that makes me visible to someone, anyone, then at least I'll remember what it feels like to be seen. The jealousy that surged through him was primal and immediate. It overrode logic, bypassed reason, went straight to the part of his brain that operated on possession and fear. Where are you going? A reunion. Her chin lifted. College friends, downtown, I RSVP'd 2 months ago. You would know that if you'd asked, if you'd looked at the calendar, if you'd acknowledged my existence in any capacity beyond signing checks and sharing an address. A reunion. College friends? He didn't know their names, couldn't picture their faces. Had she mentioned it before? Probably. In one of the conversations he'd half heard while reading emails, his mind already in the next meeting. Cancel it? Lena blinked. What? Cancel. Stay here. We can talk. If that's what you want, we'll talk. Now you want to talk? Her voice carried something that might have been grief. After 3 weeks of silence, after I've put on a dress and tried to feel human again. Now you're ready. Lena, no. She shook her head, and the gesture was final. You don't get to decide when I'm available for your attention, Ethan. You don't get to ignore me for weeks and then demand I drop everything because you've suddenly remembered I exist. I never forgot you exist. Didn't you? She moved toward the door. Because I've been disappearing for weeks, and you only noticed when I tried to be visible again. Think about that. Panic flared in his chest, unfamiliar and unwelcome. Ethan Voss didn't panic. He He strategized, he controlled, he won. But watching her walk away felt like watching something irreplaceable slip through his fingers. Don't go. She stopped with her hand on the doorknob, didn't turn around. Give me one real reason to stay. Not obligation. Not because I'm your wife, like I'm a possession you own. One actual reason that has anything to do with me as a person. The silence stretched. Ethan's mind raced through responses. Because I need you. Because the house is empty without you. Because seeing you in that dress makes me feel things I don't have words for. But they all sounded hollow, even in his head. Inadequate. Not enough. Lena waited. 5 seconds. 10. 15. When she finally turned, her expression had shifted into something that looked like resignation. That's what I thought. Lena, wait. Goodbye, Ethan. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Ethan stood alone in the penthouse for a long time after she left. The ice in his abandoned whiskey had fully melted. The city lights below continued their indifferent shimmer. Everything looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago, but something fundamental had shifted. The air tasted different, wrong. He moved to the window and pressed his palm against the glass. Cold, solid, real. Below, he could see the building's entrance, the circular drive where their cars were kept. He watched Lena emerge in that crimson dress, watched the valet bring her car around. Not the Mercedes he'd given her, but the vintage Mustang she'd had when they met, the one she loved because it was hers. She slid behind the wheel with practiced grace and pulled away without looking back. Ethan's reflection stared at him from the glass. Accusatory. One real reason to stay. He had none. Nothing that wasn't wrapped up in ownership or expectation or the roles they were supposed to play. Nothing about her. About Lena. About the woman who painted in her studio at 3 in the morning when inspiration struck, who laughed at terrible jokes, who had a scar on her left shoulder from a childhood bike accident and a birthmark behind her right ear that looked like a comma. When had he stopped noticing those things? When had she become just wife instead of Lena? 3 weeks ago, something whispered in the back of his mind. He turned from the window and moved through the penthouse like he was seeing it for the first time. It looked staged, impersonal, like a showroom. Where was Lena in this space? Her paintings used to hang in the hallway, abstract pieces full of color and movement. Now they showed neutral landscapes he'd had his assistant select from a gallery. Professional, coordinated, meaningless. Her books had lined the shelves in the living room. Poetry, art theory, novels with cracked spines from multiple readings. He'd had them move to her studio to declutter the space, make it more sophisticated, more appropriate for entertaining clients. The throw pillows she'd loved, the ones with mismatched patterns that she said made the couch feel alive, replaced with sleek geometric designs in grayscale. He'd erased her from their shared spaces. Slowly, systematically, under the guise of refinement and maturity, and she'd let him. Had she been fighting it in small ways he'd been too blind to see, or had she simply stopped caring? Ethan walked to the bar and poured a fresh drink. This time he took a long swallow, letting the burn ground him. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. Work could wait. The board could wait. Everything could wait. He needed to think. 3 weeks ago. What happened 3 weeks ago? He forced himself to remember. To actually think instead of letting his mind skim over uncomfortable territory the way it had been doing for, if he was honest, much longer than 3 weeks. The date came back sharp and clear. April 9th, a Tuesday. He'd come home early, unusual for him, some meeting canceled. Lena had been on the phone in her studio. He'd walked past, not eavesdropping exactly, but her voice had carried through the partially open door. I don't know, Jess. Sometimes I feel like I'm trapped. He'd stopped, frozen in the hallway. It's not him exactly, Lena had continued. It's the whole thing. The life. The expectations. I'm disappearing into this version of myself that isn't really me, and I don't know how to... Ethan hadn't stayed to hear the rest. He'd walked away, went to his office, closed the door, and something inside him had closed too. Trapped. She'd felt trapped. In their marriage. In their life. In him. The word had lodged in his chest like shrapnel, sharp and hot and impossible to remove. He'd told himself he was giving her space, that he needed to step back, be less present, less demanding. That she'd married him for his success and his control, and maybe she needed room to breathe. But that wasn't space he'd given her. It was abandonment disguised as consideration. He'd heard her pain and responded by withdrawing completely, by becoming exactly the kind of distant, cold husband she'd apparently been complaining about. Because if she felt trapped, maybe she wanted out. And if she wanted out, he needed to protect himself. Build walls, maintain control over the one thing he could manage, his own emotions, his own vulnerability. So he'd shut down, turned off, become the ice king of the penthouse. And she'd suffered for it, alone. Ethan drained his glass and set it down harder than intended. It cracked against the marble bar top, but didn't break. He stared at it, at his hands, at the evidence of cracks forming. His phone buzzed again. He pulled it out, ready to silence it completely, but stopped when he saw the name on the screen. Marcus Chen. His oldest friend. The best man at his wedding. Ethan almost didn't answer. But something, instinct, desperation, the memory of a time when he actually talked to people about things that mattered, made him swipe to accept. Marcus. Finally, I've called you 3 times this week. Marcus's voice carried its usual warmth, underlaid with concern. You avoiding me or just buried in spreadsheets? Busy, you know how it is. I know how you make it. Listen, Diane wanted me to check in. She ran into Lena at that art supply store in the village last week. Said she looked, I don't know, not herself. Diane's worried, I'm worried. Talk to me. Ethan moved back to the window, phone pressed to his ear. Everything's fine. That's the same tone you used when you told me the Parker acquisition was under control, right before it imploded. Try again. A long pause. Ethan watched traffic move below, tiny cars carrying people who probably had functioning marriages. She's gone, he said finally. Gone? As in, out. A reunion or something. There was a conversation. It didn't go well. What kind of conversation? The kind where she asked me why she should stay and I couldn't answer. Marcus swore softly. Ethan, what did you do? Did. Nothing. That's the problem. I did nothing. For 3 weeks I've done nothing except avoid her and tell myself I was protecting something when really I was just being a coward. Protecting what? The truth came out before Ethan could stop it. Myself. I heard her say she felt trapped, and instead of talking to her about it, I shut down, pulled away, gave her exactly what she apparently didn't want, and then acted surprised when she started disappearing. You heard her say she felt trapped and your response was to ignore her? I thought... Ethan pressed his forehead against the cold glass. I thought if she wanted out, I should make it easier, be less present, give her room to leave without it being messy. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I once watched you try to eat an entire pizza while arguing with the Tokyo office at 4 a.m. Despite everything, Ethan almost smiled. It made sense at the time. No, it didn't. It made you feel safe. There's a difference. Marcus's voice softened. Listen to me. You're doing that thing you always do, treating your marriage like a hostile takeover. Calculate, control, protect your assets. But Lena isn't a merger, man. She's a person. Your person. And if she said she felt trapped, maybe she needed you to ask why, not disappear. I know that now. So what are you going to do about it? Ethan stared out at the city. Somewhere down there, Lena was sitting with old friends, laughing maybe, pretending her marriage wasn't disintegrating, wearing a dress that made her feel visible because her own husband had rendered her invisible. I don't know, he admitted. I don't know how to fix this. Start with the truth. When she gets home, tell her the truth. All of it. Not the controlled strategic version, the messy, scared version, the version where you're human instead of a walking business plan. And if it's too late, then at least you tried. At least you fought for it instead of letting it die quietly while you watched. They talked for a few more minutes before Marcus had to go. Ethan ended the call and stood alone again in the massive penthouse. The silence pressed against his eardrums. He checked his watch. 9:43. If the reunion was downtown, she'd be there by now, probably ordering a drink, probably relieved to be away from him. The thought made his chest tight. He moved to the couch and sat, forearms on his knees, hands clasped. Waiting. He'd become good at waiting these past weeks. expert level. He could wait for her to come home, wait for the right moment, wait until he had exactly the right words, or he could stop waiting, stop calculating, stop trying to control the uncontrollable. Ethan stood, grabbed his keys, left the penthouse without bothering to change out of his suit or check his hair or do any of the things he normally did before going out. None of it mattered. Nothing mattered except finding his wife and telling her the truth before the silence became permanent. The elevator ride down felt interminable. His reflection in the polished doors looked wild-eyed and desperate. Good. Maybe desperate was what this required. He reached the garage and moved toward his car, the black Audi, sleek and fast and completely soulless. His hand was on the door when he stopped. What was he going to do? Show up at her reunion? Interrupt her evening with her friends? Prove her right about him being controlling and possessive? One real reason to stay. He still didn't have one that wasn't about him. About his fear, his need, his sudden realization that losing her would break something essential in him. Ethan leaned against the car and pulled out his phone, opened his messages, stared at Lena's name. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. What could he possibly say in a text that would matter? That would be enough? Nothing. He needed to say it to her face, needed to look in her eyes and let her see him, actually see him, stripped of the armor he wore like a second skin. He pocketed the phone and drove home. The penthouse felt even emptier when he returned. Ethan loosened his tie and poured another drink he didn't really want. Sat in the chair by the window, watched the city, waited. Time moved strangely. Minutes felt like hours. Hours collapsed into moments. His mind wouldn't settle, kept replaying the conversation. Lena's face, the way she'd looked at him like he was a stranger. I'm trying to prove to myself that I'm not dead inside. How long had she felt that way? How long had he been killing her by degrees with his absence, his silence, his assumption that providing comfort and security was the same as providing love? At some point he must have dozed off because he woke to the sound of the door opening. His watch read 1:17 in the morning. He sat up, disoriented, adrenaline spiking. Lena entered quietly, clearly trying not to wake him. She stopped when she saw him sitting there in the darkened living room, the only light coming from the city below. "You waited up." She sounded tired, surprised. "We need to talk." His voice was rough from sleep and something else. Urgency, maybe. Fear. She set down her clutch, slipped off her heels. "It's late, Ethan." "I don't care, please. Just give me 5 minutes." Lena studied him for a long moment, then moved to the couch opposite his chair. Sat on the edge like she might flee at any moment. The crimson dress had lost some of its drama in the dark, but she still looked devastating, still looked like herself in a way that made his chest ache. 5 minutes, she said quietly. Ethan leaned forward, tried to find the words, failed, started anyway. "I heard you, 3 weeks ago, on the phone. You said you felt trapped." Her eyes widened slightly. "You were listening?" "Not intentionally. I came home early. Your door was open. I heard you tell someone, Jess maybe, that you felt trapped in our life and in our marriage." He paused, forced himself to continue. "In me." Lena's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to track. "And you said nothing? For 3 weeks you've known I felt that way, and you just—" "I thought you wanted out." The words tumbled over themselves. "I thought if I gave you space, made myself less present, it would be easier, less painful. I thought I was doing the right thing." The right thing. She repeated it like it was in a foreign language. "You thought ignoring me was the right thing." "I thought loving you meant letting you go if that's what you needed." "I never said I wanted to go, Ethan. I said I felt trapped. Do you understand the difference?" He shook his head. "Tell me, please. Explain it to me like I'm an idiot, because clearly I am." Lena stood, paced to the window and back. When she spoke, her voice was careful, controlled, like she was trying very hard not to break. "I didn't feel trapped in our marriage. I felt trapped in myself, in this version of me that I've become. The perfect corporate wife, the polished accessory, the woman who gave up painting commissions because they were too unpredictable for your schedule, who stopped seeing friends because they didn't fit the image, who redecorated our home to match some magazine spread instead of our actual lives." She turned to face him fully. "I felt trapped because I couldn't recognize myself anymore, Ethan, because I looked in the mirror and saw someone I didn't know, someone beige and boring and safe. And I thought, her voice caught, I thought maybe that's what you wanted, what you needed. So I tried to be that person, and it was killing me. The words landed like physical blows. Ethan stood, moved toward her, stopped when she held up a hand. I never wanted that, he said. I fell in love with you because you were everything I wasn't. Spontaneous and passionate and alive. You made my world bigger, better. The thought that I somehow made you feel like you needed to change, you didn't make me. I did it to myself, trying to fit into your world, trying to be the wife I thought you deserved. She wrapped her arms around herself. But you never asked me to do that. You never said you needed me to be someone else. I just assumed. And then I resented you for it, even though it wasn't your fault. It was my fault, at least partly. Ethan moved closer. I let it happen. I noticed you changing and told myself it was maturity. Growth. I didn't fight for the parts of you that were disappearing because they made my life more complicated. The art supplies in the living room, the impromptu weekend trips, the friends who showed up at midnight. I let it all go because it was easier. We both let it go, Lena said softly. And then I heard you say you felt trapped. And instead of asking why, I ran, shut down, gave you exactly what you didn't need. What did I need? The question hung between them, genuine and raw. Ethan took a breath, let it out. You needed me to fight for you, to see you, to ask what was wrong instead of assuming. You needed your husband, and I gave you a roommate. A cold, distant roommate who was too afraid of losing you to actually keep you. Lena's eyes were bright, not crying exactly, but close. Why were you afraid? This was it. The truth he'd been avoiding. The thing he didn't say, didn't show, didn't allow himself to feel because feeling it meant being vulnerable and vulnerable meant losing control. Because I love you, he said simply. Because you're the only thing in my life that isn't a transaction or a strategy or a move on some board. You're real. And the thought of losing that, losing you, terrified me so completely that I sabotaged us trying to protect myself from the pain. Silence, heavy and charged. Then Lena laughed. It was a broken sound, half sob, but genuine. You're such an idiot. I know. We're both idiots. Probably. She moved to him finally, closing the distance. Stood close enough that he could smell her perfume, jasmine and something darker, richer. Close enough that he could see the fatigue around her eyes, the vulnerability she usually hid. I wasn't trying to leave you tonight, she said quietly. I was trying to remember who I am. Apart from being your wife, and apart from all the roles and expectations, just me. And did you? Remember? Some. Enough to know I don't want to lose myself completely, but enough to also know, she paused, I don't want to lose you either. Ethan lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he touched her face, gentle, careful. I'm sorry. For the silence, for the distance, for making you feel invisible in your own home. I'm sorry too, for not talking to you, for letting resentment build instead of being honest, for putting on this dress tonight to hurt you. Did it work? Judging by the look on your face when I came downstairs? Yes. Good. He let his thumb trace the line of her jaw. You should know, the dress didn't make me angry because I thought you were trying to attract someone else. It made me angry because it reminded me that you're a whole person I'd stopped seeing, that you're beautiful and alive, and I'd been treating you like furniture. Expensive furniture, at least. He smiled despite everything. The most expensive. She leaned into his touch. What do we do now? Honestly, I have no idea. This isn't something I can fix with a meeting or a contract or a strategic plan. That must be terrifying for you. It is. I'm completely out of my depth here. Good, Lena said. Maybe we both need to be out of our depth for a while. Stop trying to control everything and just exist together. Honestly. Messily. I don't know how to be messy. I'll teach you. She stepped back slightly, held out her hand. Come on. Where? Your office, right now. He let her lead him down the hall to the room he spent most of his time in. All dark wood and leather, perfectly organized, not a paper out of place. Lena went to his desk and started opening drawers. What are you doing? looking for, aha! She pulled out a stack of sticky notes and a marker, moved to the massive window that overlooked the city, started writing. Ethan watched, confused, as she filled note after note with single words or short phrases, then stuck them to the glass. Paint again. Weekend trips. Impromptu dinners. Late night talks. Call Jess back. Tell you when I'm scared. Ask when you're scared. No more assumptions. She handed him the marker. Your turn. He stared at it. I don't understand. Things you want, things you need, things you're afraid of. Put them on the glass. Make them visible. It felt ridiculous, childish, completely unlike anything Ethan Voss would normally do. He took the marker. Listen more. Talk about feelings. He grimaced, writing it. Stop trying to fix everything. Ask about her day. Actually ask. Tell her I'm scared of losing her. Tell her I love her, often. Fight for us. They filled the window with sticky notes until the city view was partially obscured by their messy, honest promises to each other. When they finished, Lena turned to him. This is us starting over. Not perfect, not controlled, just real. I can do real. He pulled her close. I want to do real. She wrapped her arms around him, and for the first time in 3 weeks, the distance between them collapsed completely. They stood there in his office, surrounded by sticky notes and honesty. Two people who had almost lost everything because they'd forgotten how to be human with each other. The reunion was fine, by the way, Lena murmured against his chest. Boring, actually. I spent most of it thinking about you, about us, about whether we could come back from this. And then I came home and you were waiting, actually waiting, not hiding, not avoiding, just present. I'll be present from now on, I promise. Don't promise, just do it. And when you mess up, because you will, tell me. We'll figure it out together. Together, he repeated. The word felt new in his mouth, foreign, right. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the dark office, while the city lights filtered through their promises written on glass. It wasn't fixed. None of this was fixed. They had work to do, conversations to have, patterns to break. But it was a start. And sometimes, Ethan realized, a start was enough. Ethan woke to sunlight streaming through windows that still wore their sticky note confessions like battle scars. For a disorienting moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then felt the weight of Lena's head on his shoulder and everything came rushing back. They'd fallen asleep on the leather couch in his office sometime around 3 in the morning, too exhausted to make it to the bedroom, too afraid to let go of each other. His arm had gone numb beneath her, but he didn't move. Didn't want to risk breaking whatever fragile thing they'd managed to build in the dark hours of confession and honesty. Lena stirred, made a small sound of protest against the light, then opened her eyes. For a second she looked confused, then her gaze found his face and softened into something that might have been relief. Hi, she said, voice rough with sleep. Hi. We fell asleep. Apparently, she sat up slowly, wincing. I'm too old to sleep on couches. You're 31. Exactly. Ancient. She stretched, and the crimson dress from last night had wrinkled into something that looked more mortal, less devastating. Her makeup had smudged slightly. Hair had escaped its careful arrangement. She looked real in a way that made Ethan's chest tight. He checked his watch. 6:47. His morning alarm would have gone off 13 minutes ago in the bedroom they hadn't slept in. Normally by now he'd be showered, dressed, halfway through his first coffee and morning emails. You're staring, Lena said. Sorry. Don't be sorry. It's just unusual. She stood, moved to the window, touched one of the sticky notes. Did we really do this? Seems like it. It's kind of embarrassing in daylight. You want to take them down? She considered, then shook her head. No, leave them. Let's see if we actually follow through before we erase the evidence. Ethan stood, joints protesting. His suit was a disaster of wrinkles, and his tie had disappeared somewhere in the night. I should shower. Change. I have a board meeting at 9. Lena turned to look at him, and something shifted in her expression. Do you? Do I what? Have to go. To the meeting. It's been on the calendar for weeks. I know. But you could delegate, or postpone, or just not go. The suggestion felt radical, impossible. He was Ethan Voss. He didn't miss board meetings, didn't postpone, didn't delegate critical decision-making to subordinates who might fumble details he'd catch. "They're expecting me," he said. "They're always expecting you. That's the problem." Lena crossed her arms, not defensive exactly, but guarded, testing. "Last night you said you'd be present, that you'd stop hiding in work. Was that just words or did you mean it?" The challenge hung between them, sharp and necessary. Ethan pulled out his phone, stared at the screen, opened his email, and started typing before he could overthink it. "David, need you to run this morning's board meeting. Full authority to make decisions. The Singapore expansion. I'll review notes this afternoon. Family matter requires attention. E." He hit send before his better judgment could intervene. Lena's eyebrows rose. "You just delegated." "Yes, David's been wanting more responsibility anyway. He can handle it." "What if he can't?" "Then we'll fix it, together, after breakfast." He pocketed the phone. "What do you want to eat?" She blinked at him like he'd started speaking in tongues. "You're asking me what I want for breakfast? Is that weird?" "Ethan, you haven't asked me what I want for breakfast in 2 years. You just leave before I wake up." The observation stung because it was true. "Well, I'm asking now. What sounds good?" Lena studied him for a long moment, clearly trying to decide if this was real or some elaborate performance that would collapse at the first sign of inconvenience. Finally, she said, "Pancakes. The kind we used to make when we first got married, with too much butter and those blueberries from the farmer's market." "We don't have blueberries." "I know, that's why we'd have to go get them, together, like normal people who aren't terrified of being seen in public looking human." It was another test. Ethan recognized the pattern now. She was checking to see if his promises from last night survived contact with daylight and routine. "Give me 10 minutes to shower and change into something that doesn't look like I slept in it," he said. "Then we'll go. Blueberries and whatever else you want." Something in her posture relaxed. Not completely. They weren't anywhere near completely, but enough that he could see she wanted to believe him. "Okay," she said quietly. 10 minutes. He made it in 12. When he came back downstairs in jeans and a t-shirt, clothing he normally reserved for weekend yard work he never actually did, Lena had changed too. Simple sundress, yellow with small white flowers. Her hair was down, minimal makeup. She looked like the woman he'd met 4 years ago at that gallery opening, before everything got complicated and polished and controlled. "You're staring again," she said, but this time she was almost smiling. "Can't help it. I forgot what you look like in daylight." Flattery isn't going to fix everything. "I know, but it's still true." They took her Mustang because she insisted, and because Ethan was trying very hard to say yes to things that didn't matter in the grand scheme, but apparently mattered to her. The morning was warm, edging toward the kind of heat that would make the city swelter by afternoon. Lena drove with the windows down, one hand on the wheel, the other tapping absently against the doorframe. "Where's this farmer's market?" Ethan asked. "Union Square, Wednesdays and Saturdays." "Today's Thursday." "I know. We'll have to find a substitute. There's a place in Chelsea that might have decent blueberries. Or we could just use frozen." "No frozen. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." She glanced at him, something complicated playing across her face. "Listen to you, Ethan Voss, blueberry purist. I contain multitudes." Apparently, they found parking 3 blocks from the market, a minor miracle, and walked the rest of the way. The city was already awake and moving, people rushing toward offices and appointments, the machine of commerce grinding forward. Ethan felt strangely detached from it all, like he'd stepped sideways out of his own life into some parallel version where he bought fruit at 9 in the morning instead of acquiring companies. The market was smaller than he expected, just a dozen vendors set up under white tents. Lena moved through them with obvious pleasure, stopping to examine tomatoes and fresh herbs, chatting easily with sellers who seemed to recognize her. "You come here often?" Ethan asked. "Used to. Before I decided I needed to be a different person." She picked up a bunch of basil, inhaled deeply. "I'd come Thursday mornings when you were at the office. Buy ingredients for dinners I'd cook alone because you'd call at 6 to say you were stuck in a meeting." The casual delivery made it worse somehow. No accusation in her tone, just fact. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know, you said that last night, multiple times." She put the basil back. The thing is, sorry doesn't actually change anything unless behavior changes too. So let's skip the apologies for a while and just do different. Be different. Okay? How? For starters, you could stop looking like you're waiting for a business call to rescue you from produce shopping. I'm not. He stopped, checked himself. His phone was in his hand. He didn't even remember taking it out of his pocket. You're right. Sorry. He caught himself. Old habits. Put it away. All the way away. If the world ends, someone will find us. He powered the phone off completely and shoved it deep into his pocket. Felt immediately anxious, like he'd severed a limb, ignored the anxiety and focused on Lena. She was smiling now, genuine and surprised. Thank you. For what? Trying. Actually trying instead of just saying you will. They found blueberries at the third stall they checked. Organic, local, ridiculously expensive. Ethan paid without flinching while the vendor bagged them along with strawberries Lena added at the last second and a small container of honey from some apiary upstate. Now eggs, Lena said. The good ones. Free range. From chickens with names and retirement plans. Chickens don't retire. These ones do. They have a whole farm situation. It's very progressive. He couldn't tell if she was joking. Decided it didn't matter. Lead the way. They spent another 20 minutes wandering through the market, buying ingredients they didn't strictly need but that Lena wanted. Fresh mozzarella, heirloom tomatoes, sourdough bread from a baker who looked like he'd stepped out of a different century. By the time they headed back to the car, Ethan was carrying 3 bags and feeling pleasantly disconnected from the person he'd been yesterday. This is nice, he said as they walked. The market? All of it. Being with you. Not thinking about mergers or board votes or quarterly projections? You're thinking about them a little bit, Lena said. I can see it in your face. That little crease between your eyebrows that shows up when you're worried about something. That obvious? To me, yes. You get it in meetings too. I've watched you enough times to recognize the signs. You came to meetings? Some. Early on, before I got the message that spouses were decorative accessories for formal dinners, but distractions during actual business. She said it lightly, but there was an edge underneath. Ethan stopped walking. I never meant to make you feel that way. I know, but you did, and I let you. And we both pretended it was fine until it wasn't. She shifted the bag she was carrying to her other hand. Can we not do the blame spiral thing? We could spend months dissecting every way we failed each other. Or we could just accept that we both screwed up and focus on not screwing up the same ways going forward. That's very rational. I'm a rational person when I'm not busy disappearing into someone else's idea of who I should be. They reached the car, loaded the bags into the trunk. Lena leaned against the driver's side door and looked at him across the roof of the Mustang. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Why did you really marry me? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean? We met at that gallery opening. You bought one of my paintings. We went to dinner. Everything moved so fast after that. Engagement in 4 months, married 6 months later, but I never really understood what you saw in me. I wasn't polished or corporate or anything like the women you usually dated. That's exactly why, Ethan said. You were different, real. You didn't care about my money or my position. You just saw me, the person underneath all the armor. And I thought if I could keep you, maybe I could keep that version of myself too, the one who still remembered how to feel things. Lena's eyes were bright. And then you spent 4 years slowly erasing everything that made me different, because different was inconvenient. Yes. No point denying it. I got scared. Thought I needed to fit you into my world instead of making space for both worlds to exist. Thought controlled and predictable was safer than messy and real. How's that working out for you? Terrible. The worst. Would not recommend. She laughed despite herself. Get in the car, Ethan. Let's go make pancakes before we get too honest and break down crying in a parking lot. The drive back was quieter but comfortable. Lena put on music, some indie band Ethan didn't recognize but that she clearly loved, singing along softly to lyrics about missing chances and second tries. He watched her when traffic allowed, memorizing the way her fingers drummed against the steering wheel, the way she tilted her head when the chorus hit. Back at the penthouse, they moved around the kitchen with surprising coordination. Lena found mixing bowls and measuring cups. Ethan located the griddle they'd received as a wedding gift and never used. She cracked eggs while he measured flour. They bumped into each other, reaching for the same drawer, and laughed about it instead of retreating to opposite sides of the room. "You're terrible at measuring," Lena said, watching him dump flour into a bowl with reckless imprecision. "I'm estimating. You're making a mess. It's called rustic, very on trend. It's called you're going to give us concrete pancakes if you don't level that off." He tried to fix it, ended up with flour on his shirt. Lena snorted, which made him grin, which led to her flicking a tiny bit of flour at his face in retaliation. Before either of them fully thought it through, they were in an all-out flour war, the kitchen dusted white, and both of them laughing like idiots. "Truce," Ethan gasped, holding up floury hands. "I surrender." "Smart man." Lena wiped at her face, smearing flour across her cheek. "We're going to have to clean all this up, you know." "Worth it." She looked at him, really looked, and something shifted in her expression, softened. "Yeah, it kind of is." They finished making the batter together, more carefully now, and Ethan stood at the griddle flipping pancakes while Lena set the table. Not the formal dining table they used for the rare occasions they entertained, but the small breakfast nook by the kitchen window that had gone unused for months. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please." She poured 2 mugs, added cream to hers, left his black the way he preferred. Small thing, barely worth noting, but it meant she still knew him, still paid attention. They sat across from each other with a plate of slightly misshapen pancakes between them, blueberries and strawberries piled on top, honey drizzled everywhere with liberal enthusiasm. "These look terrible," Lena said. "They look perfect." "You're delusional." "Probably, but there are terrible pancakes, made together. That counts for something." She cut into hers, took a bite, and made a face. "Oh God, how did we mess this up? It's pancakes. Pancakes are hard to screw up." "Too much flour. I warned you about my measuring technique." "You didn't warn me. You ignored my advice and now we're eating hockey pucks." Despite the criticism, she kept eating. So did he. They were objectively bad pancakes, dense and slightly burned at the edges, but they tasted like trying, like showing up. Like 2 people who didn't know what they were doing, but were doing it anyway. "So what now?" Lena asked after they'd made it through half the stack out of sheer determination. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we had a crisis. We stayed up all night being honest. We went to a farmer's market and made terrible pancakes. But that doesn't fix everything. We still have to figure out how to actually live together without falling back into the same patterns." Ethan set down his fork. "You're right. Last night it was necessary, but it was also kind of easy in its own way. We hit rock bottom. The only direction was up. The hard part is maintaining when things aren't so dramatic, when life gets routine again." "Yeah. When you get pulled back into work and I get pulled back into my own head and we start drifting without noticing." "That." Lena pushed her plate aside. "I don't want to drift again, Ethan. I can't. If we're going to do this, really do this, I need to know we're both committed to the work. Not just the romantic gesture version, the actual boring daily grind of choosing each other version." "I'm committed," he said immediately. "Are you? Because 3 weeks ago you were committed to our marriage too, theoretically. But when things got uncomfortable, you checked out. You chose protection over presence. What makes this time different?" The question deserved a real answer, not a platitude or a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Ethan thought about it, really thought, while Lena waited. "Because I know what losing you feels like now," he said finally. "Last night, watching you walk out that door, I got a preview of what my life looks like without you. And it was," he struggled for the word, "empty, meaningless. All the success and control and carefully managed perfection didn't mean anything if you weren't there to share it with. So what's different this time is that I'm more afraid of losing you than I am of being vulnerable. More afraid of the silence than the conversation. Does that make sense?" No. "It makes sense. But fear isn't sustainable. Eventually you'll get comfortable again. Eventually the fear of losing me will fade and the old patterns will start looking attractive because they're familiar. So what do? We build new patterns, better ones, starting right now." She pulled out her phone, opened the calendar. "Let me show you something." She turned the screen toward him. He saw blocks of time marked in different colors, her old system for tracking projects and appointments. This is how I used to manage my time, she said, before we got married. Green was painting, blue was teaching those workshops at the community center. Yellow was personal time, friends, hobbies, things that fed my soul. Red was admin stuff, life maintenance, necessary but boring. And purple was us. Date nights, weekends away, time I protected because it mattered. I don't see much purple lately. There isn't any. I stopped blocking out time for us because we stopped having an us that required protection. It just became assumed, always there but never prioritized. She opened a new calendar entry. So here's what I'm thinking. Every week, we schedule purple time, non-negotiable, no work emergencies, no social obligations we don't both agree to, just dedicated time for the relationship. Like date nights? Sometimes, but also just existing together, cooking dinner, watching terrible movies, talking, not performing our marriage for other people or fitting each other into leftover scraps of time, actual intentional presence. Ethan nodded slowly. I can do that. What else? Individual color time too. I need to paint again, teach again, have my own life separate from being your wife, and you need... She paused. Actually, I'm not sure what you need. What feeds you, Ethan? What did you use to do before you became a walking corporation? He couldn't remember. Tried to reach back through years of 12-hour workdays and weekend strategy sessions and dinners that were really networking opportunities. There had to be something. I used to play basketball, he said, surprising himself. In college, and after, at the gym. Pick-up games on weekends. I was pretty good. When's the last time you played? Not since we got married. Maybe before. Why'd you stop? Didn't seem important. Didn't seem productive. Just a waste of time that could be spent on actual useful things. Lena leaned back in her chair. That's exactly the problem. You categorize anything that doesn't directly contribute to success as wasted time. But those things, the basketball, the parts of me that loved painting and spontaneity, those aren't wastes. They're what make us human, what keep us from becoming hollow. So I should start playing basketball again. You should start doing something that's just for you, that has nothing to do with advancement or image or strategy, something that reminds you you're a person, not a machine. Will you come watch if I find a game? She smiled. That's not the point. You don't do it for an audience. You do it because it matters to you. But will you come anyway? Yeah, I'll come. They sat in comfortable silence for a minute. The terrible pancakes forgotten, both of them thinking through the architecture of what they were trying to build. I want to meet your friends, Ethan said suddenly. The people from last night, from your old life. I realized yesterday I don't even know their names. Lena looked startled. Why? Because they're important to you. Because I erased them along with everything else I decided didn't fit. And because if we're really doing this, rebuilding our life together, I need to understand all the parts of you I ignored. They're not going to like you. Why not? Because I've spent 2 years complaining about my emotionally unavailable husband who treats me like a beautiful object instead of a partner. They have opinions. Fair opinions sounds like. Very fair. Also very protective of me. Jess once threatened to key your car. Which car? The Audi. She said it looked like a villain's vehicle. Despite everything, Ethan laughed. I like her already. You're insane. She's going to eviscerate you. Let her. I deserve it. And maybe I need to hear from people who love you what it looks like when I fail you. Lena studied him like he was a puzzle she was trying to solve. Who are you and what did you do with my husband? I'm trying to become the person you thought you were marrying. The one who sees you, who shows up, who doesn't hide behind walls and spreadsheets. It's going to be hard. I know. You're going to fail sometimes, revert back to old patterns, choose work over us, shut down when you're scared. Probably. And when that happens, I need you to let me call you on it. Not get defensive or dismissive. Just hear me and adjust. Okay? I'm serious, Ethan. The biggest problem we've had is that I've been afraid to push back when you do something hurtful because I didn't want to be the difficult wife, the demanding one. So I stayed quiet and let resentment build instead of fighting for us in the moment. So fight for us. Please. I'd rather have the difficult conversation than the silence. She reached across the table, took his hand. This is scary. What is? Hope. Believing this might actually work. Last night I was ready to accept that we'd broken something unfixable. Now I'm sitting here making plans like we have a future, and it's terrifying because what if we don't? What if we try and it's still not enough? Ethan squeezed her fingers. Then at least we tried. At least we showed up and did the work instead of letting it die quietly. That has to count for something. Does it? I think so. I hope so. They cleared the dishes together, loading the dishwasher in a silence that felt different than the ones they'd been living in. This one had weight, but not hostility. Substance, but not distance. Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned. What? Ethan asked. Jess, texting to make sure I survived last night. She thinks... She stopped. What does she think? That you're controlling and cold, and I should leave before you completely erase who I am. She might be right about the controlling and cold part. Maybe the leaving part too. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. Or it was true. I'm trying very hard for it to not be true anymore, but I understand why the people who love you would want you far away from me. Lena set down her phone. Can I tell you something? Always, part of me wanted to believe she was right. When things got really bad these past few weeks, there was this voice in my head saying, just leave. You'd be fine financially. You could start over. Find someone who actually sees you. It would be so easy to just walk away. The admission hurt, but Ethan made himself hear it. Why didn't you? Because another part of me remembered why I fell in love with you in the first place. The man who showed up at that gallery and actually looked at my paintings instead of just pretending. Who asked me questions about technique and composition and listened like my answers mattered. Who took me to dinner and told me about growing up with a father who measured love in achievements and how he was trying to be different. Who was honest about being emotionally stunted but wanting to learn. She paused. I kept hoping that person was still in there somewhere, under all the ice and control. Seeing... He is, Ethan said quietly. He's just been buried under a lot of fear and bad habits. Then dig him out, please, because I can't do this with the Ice King version. I need the person who's willing to be messy and human and wrong sometimes. You have him, I promise. Don't promise, just be. Okay, I'll be, we'll both be. Together, Lena smiled, tired but genuine. Look at us, actually communicating, like adults. It's novel. It's exhausting. That too. Her phone buzzed again. She picked it up, typed a response, showed him the screen. I'm okay. We're talking. Really talking. Give us some time to figure this out. Love you. What did she say? Ethan asked. She said if you hurt me again, she's going to do more than key your car, and that she's here if I need her, and that she loves me. Good. You should have people like that. I do. I'd just forgotten how to lean on them. They moved to the living room, gravitating toward the couch without discussion. Lena curled into the corner, feet tucked under her. Ethan sat close but not crowding, leaving space she could choose to fill or not. Tell me about your paintings, he said. The ones you haven't made, the ones you've been wanting to create but haven't. She looked surprised. Why? Because I want to know. Because I should have been asking all along and I wasn't, so I'm asking now. Lena was quiet for a moment, then started talking. About colors that haunted her. Compositions she saw in her sleep. A series she'd been planning about transformation and identity and the space between who we are and who we pretend to be. Ethan listened. Actually listened. Didn't check his phone or think about emails or mentally review talking points for meetings. Just absorbed her words and watched her face come alive as she described work that existed only in potential. You should make them, he said when she finished. Maybe. Not maybe. Definitely. Set up your studio again. Stop hiding your work in the back room like it's shameful. Paint whatever you want and don't apologize for it. That easy? Why not? Because I haven't sold a painting in 2 years. Because galleries aren't interested in the wife of Ethan Voss doing vanity art projects. Because I'm out of practice and probably terrible now. Then be terrible. Who cares? Do it anyway. She laughed, but it was wet. You really mean that? I do. I want you to paint again. I want to come home and find you covered in acrylics, too absorbed to notice I'm there. I want our house full of your work, even if it clashes with the designer furniture. Especially if it clashes. The penthouse is going to look insane. Good, it's too sterile anyway. Needs chaos. Lena leaned her head against his shoulder. I'm still scared. Of what? That this is temporary. That we'll have a few good days and then slide back into everything that was broken. That wanting to change isn't the same as being able to change. We'll fail, Ethan said. Multiple times, probably. I'll work too late and you'll shut down and we'll have terrible fights and hurt each other. But we'll also keep showing up, keep trying, keep choosing this over the easier option of giving up. You sound very certain. I'm not. I'm terrified, actually, but I'm also done running from things that scare me. They sat together as morning shifted into afternoon, talking through logistics and fears and plans for how to rebuild what they'd almost destroyed. It wasn't perfect. Some of the conversation was awkward. They disagreed about small things and had to negotiate compromise. But it was real, raw, honest in a way they hadn't been in years. And when Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket, David calling about the board meeting he'd missed, he let it go to voicemail and stayed exactly where he was. The voicemail notification sat on his phone like a small accusation. Ethan felt Lena tense against his shoulder, clearly having heard the buzz, even though he'd tried to ignore it. You should check that, she said quietly. It can wait. Can it? She sat up, putting space between them. Not much, but enough that he noticed. This is what I'm talking about. You can't just pretend work doesn't exist. That's not sustainable either. I'm not pretending. You're avoiding. Which is different from choosing us, Ethan. Choosing us means figuring out how to balance both things, not swinging from one extreme to the other. He pulled out his phone, checked the screen. 3 missed calls from David, 2 from his assistant Claire, 1 text from Marcus that just said, "Call me when you surface." David called about the meeting, Ethan said. Probably wants approval on something. So call him back. I'm not asking you to quit your job. I'm asking you to find a middle ground between obsession and neglect. She was right. Again. Ethan was learning that Lena was right about most things when he actually listened, which was humbling and uncomfortable and necessary. He dialed David's number. It rang twice before a harried voice answered. Thank God. Where have you been? Dealing with something personal. You get my email? Yeah, I got it. Very cryptic. Very unlike you. David paused. Everything okay? Getting there? What do you need? Singapore's pushing back on the timeline. They want another month for due diligence. Jenkins thinks we should hold firm, but I'm worried about spooking them entirely. What do you think? Ethan's instinct was to launch into analysis mode, run through scenarios, calculate risk, make the decision himself. But he caught himself, glanced at Lena, who was watching him with careful attention. What do you think? He asked David instead. Silence on the other end. I'm sorry, what? You're running this. You know the players. What's your gut telling you? David sounded genuinely thrown. I think we give them 2 weeks, show flexibility without looking desperate. But I wanted your approval before committing. You have it. 2 weeks. Document everything and keep me in the loop, but you're authorized to negotiate terms. Seriously? Is there a reason you can't handle this? No, you never delegate authority like this. It's usually 5 approval layers and a strategic review. Things are changing. I'm trusting you to make good decisions. If you need me, I'm available, but I'm also stepping back from micromanaging every detail. Is this because of what Claire said at the last meeting about you needing to let go of control? Because if she complained to HR again, this has nothing to do with Claire or HR. This is me recognizing I've been doing too much for too long and it's affecting things that matter more than quarterly earnings. More silence. Then, carefully, things like your marriage? Things exactly like my marriage. Good, David said. I mean, not good that there were problems. Good that you're addressing them. Diane was worried. She mentioned it to Marcus and he mentioned it to me and we've all been kind of concerned but didn't know how to. Anyway, good. I'm glad you're taking time. Thanks. Anything else urgent? Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. I'll send you notes from the meeting tonight. Tomorrow afternoon is fine. Take your time. He ended the call and looked at Lena. Better? Better, she confirmed. That actually sounded like delegating instead of abandoning ship entirely. I'm learning. Slowly, but yes. His phone buzzed again. Marcus this time. Ethan showed Lena the screen. Your friend from last night? Yeah. He knew something was wrong before I did. Probably wants to check in. Answer it. I'm going to change out of this dress anyway. I've been wearing it for like 18 hours and I feel disgusting. She disappeared upstairs while Ethan answered. Marcus? You're alive. Good start. How'd it go? We talked. Really talked. It was... He searched for the right word. Brutal. Necessary. Maybe the beginning of something better if we don't screw it up. That's more honest than I expected. You okay? No idea. Ask me in a month, maybe a year. Right now I'm just trying to show up and not run away when things get uncomfortable. That's growth, my friend. Uncomfortable and painful and growth. Marcus paused. Diane wants to know if you guys need anything. Food, company, someone to yell at. She's offering full support services. Tell her thanks. But we need to figure some things out ourselves first. Maybe dinner next week with you guys. Lena wants to meet people from my life, and I apparently need to remember I have friends who aren't business contacts. Absolutely. We'll set something up. And Ethan? Yeah? I'm proud of you for not doing your usual thing where you bury problems until they explode. I did do that thing. That's exactly what I did. I'm just trying to clean up the explosion now. Still counts. Talk soon. Ethan set down his phone and looked around the penthouse. In daylight, it looked different than it had last night. Less like a mausoleum, more like a space that could potentially feel lived in if they actually tried. The sticky notes were still on his office window. The kitchen still bore evidence of their flower fight. Small cracks in the careful facade he'd built. Lena came back downstairs in leggings and an oversized sweater, hair pulled into a messy knot, face scrubbed clean. She looked younger, more like herself. I've been thinking, she said. About? Your thing, the basketball. We should find you a game today. Today? Why not? You took the day off, might as well use it. I don't have gear, haven't played in years, I'll be terrible. Probably. But that's kind of the point, right? Doing something just because you want to, not because you're good at it or it serves some strategic purpose. Ethan considered. The idea of playing basketball, of doing something physical and pointless and fun, felt foreign, like putting on clothes that didn't fit anymore, but also like something he'd been missing without knowing it. Okay, he said. Let's do it. They found a gym 3 miles away that ran open court sessions in the afternoons. Ethan stopped at a sporting goods store on the way, bought shorts and a t-shirt and shoes that the bored teenager working there assured him were acceptable. Felt ridiculous checking out with basketball gear at 2 in the afternoon on a Thursday, like some midlife crisis cliché. You look nervous, Lena said as they pulled into the gym parking lot. I am nervous. What if I'm completely washed up? Then you'll be washed up. So what? Nobody here knows you're Ethan Voss, master of the corporate universe. You're just some guy trying to play basketball. Just some guy, he repeated. I don't know how to be just some guy. Good time to learn. The gym was old school, scuffed floors, the smell of sweat and rubber, sound of basketballs echoing off high ceilings. A pickup game was already running on one court. Ethan watched for a minute, assessing skill levels, looking for an opening. You going to stand here all day or actually play? Lena asked. Observing, getting a feel for, you're stalling. I'm strategizing. It's pickup basketball, not a hostile takeover. Just go. She was right. He was overthinking this like he overthought everything. Ethan dropped his bag on the sideline and jogged over to the group of guys waiting for next game. Need one? He asked. A guy in his 20s with an impressive beard looked him up and down. You got game? Used to. We'll see if I still do. Good enough. You're with us. It took Ethan exactly 3 possessions to remember why he'd loved this. The simplicity of it. The pure physical challenge with no subtext or politics or hidden agendas. You either made the shot or you didn't. Either played defense or got scored on. Everything clear and immediate and honest. He was rusty as hell. Missed his first 2 shots. Got burned on defense by a kid who couldn't have been older than 19. But his muscle memory started kicking in. The feel of the ball. The rhythm of footwork. The spatial awareness that came from years of practice. By the 3rd game, he was holding his own. Hit a baseline jumper that felt smooth leaving his hand. Grabbed a rebound in traffic. Made a decent pass that led to an easy layup. Between games, he caught his breath and looked over at the bleachers where Lena sat watching. She waved. He waved back, feeling absurdly pleased that she was there, even though he told her she didn't have to come. They played for almost 2 hours. Ethan's lungs burned and his legs felt like concrete, and he was definitely going to be sore tomorrow, but it was good pain. Earned pain. The kind that reminded him he had a body that existed for things other than sitting in conference rooms. Not bad, old man, the bearded guy said as they wrapped up. You play regularly? Used to, long time ago, trying to get back into it. We run games Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. You're welcome any time. Thanks. I might take you up on that. Ethan grabbed his bag and walked over to Lena, sweating through his new shirt and feeling more tired than he had in months. How was it? She asked. Hard, good. Really good, actually. You looked happy out there. Like, actually happy. Not business dinner smile happy. I was. I forgot how much I missed this. Then you should keep doing it. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Make it part of the schedule. Tuesday and Thursday I usually have... He stopped himself. Had standing meetings, which can be moved or delegated. Look at you, learning to prioritize. They drove home as the city shifted into rush hour traffic. Ethan still sweating and probably making her car smell terrible, but not caring. He felt loose, lighter, like he'd burned off something toxic that had been building up for years. Thank you, he said. For what? Pushing me to do that. I wouldn't have gone if you hadn't. You're welcome, but also, you need to start pushing yourself. I can't be responsible for making you remember you're human. That has to come from you. I know. I'm working on it. Back at the penthouse, Ethan showered while Lena ordered Thai food from a place she loved that he'd never heard of despite living in the same city for a decade. They ate on the couch, splitting pad Thai and green curry, arguing about whether the spice level was perfect or trying to kill them. Too hot, Ethan gasped, reaching for water. It's medium. You're just weak. My mouth is literally on fire. Dramatically on fire or actually on fire? Both. Lena laughed, and the sound filled the space in a way it hadn't in months. Years, maybe. Ethan watched her, committing this version to memory. Happy Lena. Relaxed Lena. The woman he'd married before they both forgot how to be people together. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Buzzed again. You can check it, Lena said. I'm not going to freak out every time your phone makes noise. He glanced at the screen. Claire. Then another text from David. Then an email notification from the CFO. Work stuff, he said. Can wait until tomorrow. Or you could spend 20 minutes handling it now so it doesn't pile up and create an actual emergency. I'm serious about the balance thing, Ethan. Ignoring work completely isn't the answer either. She was giving him permission. More than that, encouraging him to engage with the part of his life that mattered to him professionally while making it clear the personal mattered more. It was a gift he didn't deserve but desperately needed. 20 minutes, he agreed. Then I'm done for the night. I'll clean up. You do your thing. He took his laptop to his office, dealt with Claire's question about scheduling, reviewed David's notes from the Singapore call, responded to the CFO's concerns about the quarterly projections. Efficient, focused. Then closed the laptop and walked away, leaving 3 emails unread and 2 voicemails unchecked. Tomorrow. They could wait until tomorrow. Lena was in her studio when he found her. The door was open for the first time in weeks, light spilling into the hallway. She stood in front of a blank canvas, just looking at it like it might bite her. Hey, Ethan said from the doorway. She turned. Hey yourself, done with work? Yeah, what are you doing? Trying to remember how to start. It's been so long I don't even know where to begin. What if you just begin? Put paint on canvas, see what happens. What if it's terrible? Then it's terrible. Make another one. She picked up a brush, put it down. I'm scared. Of what? That I've lost it. That I was never that good to begin with, and I've just been lying to myself all these years. Ethan moved into the room, careful not to touch anything. The studio still held traces of her old work, sketches tacked to walls, paint-stained palettes, jars of brushes in various states of cleanliness, evidence of the person she'd been before she started disappearing. You want to know what I remember about the first painting I saw you create? He asked. We weren't together when I was actively painting. No, but I came by your old apartment once, early in the relationship. You were working on something and you were so absorbed you didn't even hear me knock. I watched you through the window for like 10 minutes before I felt creepy and left. You were completely lost in it. And the painting, It was this abstract thing, lots of blues and grays, and I had no idea what it was supposed to be, but I couldn't stop looking at it. Lena stared at him. You never told me that. I didn't want you to think I was a stalker, but the point is, you had something, have something, talent, vision, whatever you want to call it. And maybe you're rusty, maybe the first few paintings are rough, but you can't lose something that fundamental. You sound very certain. I'm not certain about much, but I'm certain about you. She picked up the brush again. This time she didn't put it down, squeezed blue paint onto her palette, then green, then white, started mixing. Will you stay? She asked. While I work? If you want me to. I want you to. Ethan settled into the old armchair in the corner, her reading chair, the one piece of furniture from her old apartment that she'd insisted on keeping. He watched her work in silence, not offering suggestions or commentary, just present. She moved hesitantly at first, like she was learning a language she used to speak fluently. But gradually something shifted. Her movements became more confident, more sure. The painting that emerged wasn't complex, simple shapes, color blocking, but it was hers. Uniquely, unmistakably hers. She worked for over an hour before stepping back, brush still in hand, paint on her fingers, and a streak across her cheek. It's not good, she said. It's a start. That's generous. It's true. First one in 2 years. Give yourself credit for showing up. She set down the brush and moved to wash her hands in the small sink. This feels weird. What does? You being here, supporting this. The old you would have been annoyed that I was wasting time on hobbies when I could be doing something productive. The old me was an idiot. The old me let him be an idiot without pushing back. So we're both learning. Lena dried her hands and came to sit on the arm of his chair. Can I ask you something? Always. What changed? Not last night. I understand the crisis point, but what made you actually hear me this time instead of just retreating further? Ethan thought about it. About the moment in the hallway 3 weeks ago when he'd heard her say she felt trapped and everything had fractured. About last night when she'd asked for one real reason to stay and he'd had nothing. About all the years of carefully constructed distance that had led to this point. I think I finally got scared enough, he said. For most of our marriage, I operated from this place of assumed permanence. You were my wife, we had our life, it was stable and controlled, and I thought that was enough. That providing security and comfort was the same as providing love. And when I heard you say you felt trapped, part of me thought, okay, this is the beginning of the end. She's going to leave. And instead of fighting for us, I just started building walls to protect myself from the inevitable pain. But I didn't leave. No. You stayed, and you suffered. And I watched you disappear piece by piece and told myself it was fine because you were still there physically. Still in the house, still wearing my ring, still playing the part. But last night when you asked me why you should stay and I couldn't answer, that's when I realized I'd already lost you. Not to another person or another life. Just to my own fear and control and refusal to be vulnerable. And that was more terrifying than anything I'd imagined. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I almost didn't come home. What? Last night, I sat in my car outside the restaurant for like 20 minutes after the reunion ended, and I thought about just driving, getting on the highway and going somewhere else, starting over. It would have been so easy. The admission hit him like a punch. Why didn't you? Because I realized running away wouldn't fix the part of me that's broken. The part that's been hiding and shrinking and trying to be someone I'm not. I could leave you and the penthouse and this whole life, but I'd still be stuck with myself. And I needed to figure out if I could fix that part first before making any decisions about us. And I don't know yet. I'm working on it. Painting again is part of it. Reconnecting with friends. Remembering who I am separate from being your wife. But it's going to take time. I have time. As much as you need. She looked down at him, something soft and complicated in her expression. What if I need a lot of time? What if fixing myself means needing space from us for a while? The question made his stomach drop, but he forced himself to hear it, really hear it. Then we figure that out. Whatever you need, I'm not going anywhere. Even if I need distance. Even then, I'd hate it, but I'd respect it. He paused. Is that what you need? No, I don't think so. I think I need the opposite, actually. I need us to be more together, not less, but differently, honestly, without all the performance and pretending. I can do that. I want to do that. It's going to be messy. You keep saying that like it's a warning. I know it's going to be messy. I'm okay with messy. You hate messy. You've spent your entire adult life eliminating mess and chaos and anything unpredictable. Yeah, and look where that got us. Maybe mess is better. Maybe unpredictable is what keeps things alive instead of perfectly preserved and dead. Lena slid off the chair arm into his lap, straddling him, paint-stained hands framing his face. Who are you? I'm your husband, trying very hard to be a better version of that. It's working. She kissed him. Not the polite, perfunctory kisses they'd been exchanging for months, but something real, hungry, like she was trying to find something she'd lost. He kissed her back with everything he couldn't articulate, the fear and hope and desperate love that had been building behind his walls for 3 weeks. His hands found her waist, pulled her closer, and for a few minutes they just existed in that space of reconnection and need and complicated feeling. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lana rested her forehead against his. I missed you, she said. I'm right here. No, I missed you. The person you are when you're not being the Ice King. The one who watches me paint and plays basketball and makes terrible pancakes. I missed him. I missed you too, the real you. Not the polished version, the one with paint on her face and opinions about spice levels and courage to call me out when I'm being an idiot. I have a lot of opinions about your idiocy. Might take a while to express them all. I'm listening for as long as it takes. She kissed him again, softer this time, then climbed off his lap and pulled him to his feet. Come on. Where are we going? Bedroom. To continue this conversation without an audience of half-finished paintings judging us. They're not judging. They definitely are. That one in the corner is particularly disapproving. He let her lead him out of the studio, down the hall to the bedroom they'd been avoiding for weeks. It felt different crossing that threshold together. Intentional, chosen. And later, wrapped around each other in the dark, both of them exhausted and raw and more honest than they'd been in years, Ethan felt something shift. Not fixed, they were nowhere near fixed, but moving in the right direction, toward each other instead of away. Ethan? Lena's voice was soft in the darkness. Yeah, thank you for not giving up, even when I couldn't figure out how to ask you not to. Thank you for giving me another chance. For staying when leaving would have been easier. We're going to fight, mess up, hurt each other again. I know. And we'll have to do this whole brutal honesty thing over and over. I know that too. Okay, just making sure we're on the same page. Same page, he confirmed. Messy, complicated, imperfect page. She made a sound that might have been agreement, might have been laughter. Then she was quiet, breathing evening out into sleep. Ethan stayed awake longer, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight of her against him, thinking about 3 weeks of silence and 1 night of breaking and a day of tentative rebuilding, about sticky notes on windows and terrible pancakes and basketball games and paint-stained fingers, about the long, difficult work of learning to be human with the person you love. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He ignored it, let it buzz itself into silence. Whatever it was could wait. Everything could wait. This, Lena, their marriage, the messy, complicated work of loving each other honestly, this couldn't wait. So he stayed present, stayed awake, stayed in this moment that felt fragile and precious and hard-won. And when he finally fell asleep, he didn't dream of mergers or board meetings or strategic victories. He dreamed of colors and canvas and Lena's laugh echoing through rooms that finally felt like home. The crash came on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic explosion or a single catastrophic failure, but the kind of slow-motion unraveling that Ethan should have seen coming if he'd been paying attention to anything beyond the fragile peace he and Lena had been building for 2 weeks. It started with an email at 6 in the morning from their lead investor in Tokyo. Ethan was making coffee, actual coffee, standing in the kitchen instead of grabbing it on his way out the door when his phone lit up with the notification. He almost didn't check it, almost left it until after breakfast with Lena like they'd been doing every morning since their reconciliation. But old habits were muscle memory, and his thumb was already swiping before his brain caught up. The subject line was in all caps. Urgent. Chen merger, compromise. He opened it, read 3 sentences, felt his stomach drop. No, he said aloud. No, no, no. Lena appeared in the doorway, hair still sleep mussed, wearing one of his old college t-shirts. What's wrong? Chen Industries. They're backing out of the merger. Some clause in the contract they're claiming we violated. This is bad. This is really bad. How bad? $100 million investment collapses overnight bad. Board calls for my resignation bad. He was already scrolling through his contacts, finding David's number. I have to call Ethan. Lena's voice cut through his spiraling. Take a breath. I don't have time to breathe. This is a crisis, an actual emergency. I need to get to the office, call Tokyo, figure out what the hell happened, and how to fix it before the market opens and our stock price tanks. Okay, do that. But panicking isn't going to help. He looked at her standing there, all calm and reasonable, while his world was imploding, and something sharp twisted in his chest. Annoyance, resentment, the old familiar feeling of being alone in the stress while everyone else got to be rational. Easy for you to say. Your career isn't on the line. The words came out harder than he meant them. Lena's expression shifted, not hurt exactly, but something closing off. The warmth in her eyes cooling into something more guarded. Right, she said quietly. Of course. Handle your crisis. I'll get out of your way. She turned to leave, and Ethan wanted to call her back, wanted to apologize for the knee-jerk cruelty, but David was already answering his call, and the moment evaporated. Tell me this is a mistake, Ethan said into the phone. I wish I could. David sounded exhausted. I've been up since 4 going through the contract. They're not wrong, Ethan, technically. We missed a disclosure deadline by 2 days. 2 days. And they're using it as grounds to void the entire agreement. 2 days doesn't void a $100 million merger. Get legal on this. Now. I'm coming in. He was already moving, phone pressed to his ear, grabbing his keys and jacket. Lena had disappeared upstairs. Part of him knew he should go after her, should explain, should at least acknowledge that he'd just done exactly what he'd promised not to do. Shut her out. The second work got hard, but the crisis was immediate, and her hurt feelings could wait, and he'd deal with it later once he'd put out this fire. The rational part of his brain, the part that had spent 2 weeks learning about presence and balance and not retreating into control when things got scary, was screaming that this was the test, that this was the exact moment where he either proved he'd changed or proved all his promises were just pretty words. He ignored that part, walked out the door without saying goodbye. The office was chaos. David met him at the elevator looking like he hadn't slept. Legal was already assembled in the conference room, and Claire had rearranged his entire schedule to accommodate emergency calls with investors who were understandably freaking out about their portfolios. Ethan fell into it like muscle memory, took command, started directing traffic, got legal working on loopholes while he personally called the lead investor in Tokyo to negotiate. The conversation went badly. Mr. Chen, I understand your concerns, but this is a minor administrative oversight, not grounds to destroy a partnership we've been building for 18 months. Minor to you, perhaps. Chen's English was crisp, his tone colder. To us, it represents carelessness, lack of attention to detail. If you cannot meet a simple deadline, how can we trust you with our investment? We can make this right. Extend the timeline, add penalty clauses if that would make you more comfortable. But walking away hurts both of us. Walking away protects us from further association with an organization that does not value precision. The call ended badly. Ethan slammed his phone down hard enough that Claire jumped. Get me the full board on a call in 30 minutes, he said. And someone find out who missed that deadline. I want names. The next 6 hours blurred together. Calls and meetings and legal documents. Damage control with other investors. Strategic planning about how to spin this to minimize stock impact. The machine of crisis management grinding forward while Ethan operated on autopilot in black coffee. At 2 in the afternoon, Marcus appeared in his office doorway. You look terrible, Marcus said. Chen's gone, deal's dead. I'm trying to keep the rest of our partnerships from imploding. I heard. That's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? I don't have time for social calls. Marcus came in anyway, closed the door, sat down uninvited. Lena called Diane. She's upset. I'll deal with it later. Will you? Because from what Diane said, you walked out this morning without explanation after snapping at her. Sound familiar? Ethan's jaw tightened. This is different. This is an actual emergency, not me avoiding problems. There's a real crisis that requires my attention, and she understands that. But you can't just revert to Ice King mode the second things get hard. That's exactly the pattern you promised to break. What was I supposed to do? The merger is collapsing. My job is potentially on the line. Should I have stayed home to make pancakes and talk about feelings while my entire company imploded? No. But you could have taken 5 minutes to explain what was happening, to not shut her out like she's irrelevant, to remember that the work you've been doing on your marriage doesn't stop existing when work stress shows up. Ethan rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. I know, you're right. The second I saw that email, all the old instincts kicked in. Compartmentalize. Focus. Deal with emotions later. And by the time I realized what I was doing, I was already here. So call her. I can't right now. The board meeting is in 10 minutes and I need to prepare talking points. Marcus stood. Your choice. But Ethan, you've spent 2 weeks building something real with her. Don't destroy it in 2 hours because you're scared and stressed and reverting to old patterns. He left. Ethan sat alone in his office staring at his phone. Lena's name in his contacts. 1 call, 5 minutes. That's all it would take. The board meeting notification popped up on his screen. He put down the phone and went to the meeting. It did not go well. Jenkins was pushing for accountability, which meant heads needed to roll. Sarah from operations wanted a full investigation into how the deadline was missed. The CFO was already running numbers on how much this would cost them beyond the lost investment. The question we need to ask, Jenkins said, leaning back in his chair with the smugness of someone who'd opposed the merger from the start, is whether this represents a larger pattern of organizational dysfunction. If we can't meet simple deadlines, what else are we missing? It was 2 days, Ethan said, on one disclosure in an 18-month process. An oversight, not a pattern. An oversight that cost us $100 million and our credibility with Asian markets. That's not nothing, Ethan. I'm aware of what it cost us. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been distracted lately, delegating more, taking time off, missing meetings. Maybe your attention hasn't been where it needs to be. The implication hung in the air. Ethan felt something cold and ugly unfurl in his chest. Are you suggesting this is my fault? I'm suggesting that leadership sets the tone. And when leadership is unfocused, mistakes happen. Sarah jumped in. That's not fair, Jenkins. David was running point on Chen, not Ethan, and the disclosure deadline was an administrative error in legal's workflow, not a strategic failure. But who delegated that authority? Who stepped back from direct oversight? Jenkins looked directly at Ethan. I'm not saying you're entirely to blame. I'm saying we need to evaluate whether recent changes in management approach contributed to this failure. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to defend his decisions to delegate, to trust his team, to create space for his personal life. But sitting in that conference room with the board looking at him with varying degrees of concern and judgment, all he could think was that maybe Jenkins was right. Maybe trying to be present in his marriage had made him absent where it mattered professionally. Maybe you couldn't actually have both. Maybe something always had to give. I take full responsibility, he said finally. The failure happened under my leadership. I'll fix it. How? The CFO asked. I'll personally negotiate with Chen, fly to Tokyo if necessary, find out what it would take to salvage this, and I'll implement new oversight protocols to ensure this never happens again. When? I can be on a plane tonight. The meeting continued for another hour, hammering out details and assigning blame and planning damage control. By the time it ended, Ethan felt hollowed out, scraped clean, running on fumes and professional survival instinct. He checked his phone. 4 missed calls from Lena. 3 texts. Are you okay? I know you're busy, but can you just let me know what's happening? Ethan, please. The last one was from 20 minutes ago. He should call, should explain, should do literally anything other than what he was about to do, which was book a flight to Tokyo and disappear into work for however long it took to fix this mess. He texted back instead. Crisis at work. May need to travel. We'll explain later. 3 dots appeared immediately. then disappeared, then appeared again. Okay, just that. One word that somehow contained more disappointment than any paragraph could have held. Ethan stared at the screen, hating himself, hating the situation, hating that he was making a choice he knew was wrong but couldn't seem to stop making. Claire knocked on his door. "I've got you on a flight out of JFK at 9 tonight, direct to Tokyo. Hotel reservations at the Imperial. Should I arrange the car service?" "Yeah, thanks." "Do you need me to clear your schedule for the rest of the week?" The rest of the week. He was supposed to have dinner with Lena and Marcus and Diane tomorrow night. Supposed to go to her art show on Thursday, a small gallery exhibition where she was showing 3 of her new paintings. His first basketball game with the regular Tuesday afternoon group was today, and he'd already missed it because of the crisis. All the careful architecture they'd been building, all the promises and plans and purple time blocked on calendars, collapsing in real time. "Clear it," he said. "All of it. I'll be back when I'm back." He worked until 7, then went home to pack. The penthouse was dark when he arrived. For a second he thought Lena had left, really left this time, but then he saw light coming from her studio. He found her in there, painting. Something aggressive and chaotic, lots of red and black, slashing brushstrokes that looked angry. "Hey," he said from the doorway. She didn't turn around. "You're going to Tokyo. How did you—" Marcus called. Diane called. "I'm apparently the last person you thought to inform about your travel plans." "It's not like that." "No?" She set down her brush, finally turned to face him. "Then what's it like, Ethan? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like you reverting to every pattern we've been trying to break. Crisis happens, you shut down, you disappear into work, and I'm left wondering if anything from the past 2 weeks was real or just performance." "It was real. It is real. But this is also real. My company is imploding. I have to fix it." "At what cost?" "What do you want me to say? That I should just let everything collapse because we made some promises about work-life balance? This isn't theoretical, Lena. This is my career, my reputation, everything I've built." "And what about what we've built? Does that not count?" "Of course it counts, but it can wait. This can't." The words were out before he could stop them, and he watched them land on her like physical blows. "It can wait," she repeated slowly. "Our marriage can wait. I can wait. Just like always." "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it? Because it sounds exactly like what you've been saying for years. Work is the priority. Everything else, including me, gets whatever's left over. If there's anything left over. This is different. This is an emergency." "And what about us? When we were falling apart 2 weeks ago, was that not an emergency? Or does that only count when you're the one who finally notices the crisis?" Ethan felt his control slipping, the carefully maintained calm fracturing under pressure. "I don't have time for this conversation right now. My flight leaves in 2 hours. I need to pack." "Then pack. Run away. Do what you always do when things get hard." "I'm not running away. I'm doing my job. I'm being responsible. Someone has to actually handle the real-world consequences instead of hiding in a studio pretending everything can be fixed with paint and good intentions." The cruelty of it hit the air between them like a slap. Lena's face went pale, then flushed. "Get out," she said quietly. "Lena, get out of my studio, pack your things, go to Tokyo, save your company. Do whatever you need to do, but get away from me right now before I say something we can't come back from." He wanted to take it back. Wanted to apologize for the vicious dismissal of her work, her healing, everything she'd been trying to rebuild. But the words stuck in his throat, blocked by pride and stress and the old familiar armor snapping back into place. So he left, packed in silence. Grabbed his passport and laptop in the garment bag that held his travel suits, headed for the door. Lena was waiting in the living room when he came down with his luggage. "Before you go," she said, "I need you to know something." "What?" "This is it. This is the moment where you decide who you want to be. Not in some abstract future tense way. Right now. You can get on that plane and prove that nothing has changed, that work will always win, that I'll always be the thing you get to later if there's time. Or you can stay and fight for us. Choose us. Even when it's hard and inconvenient and scary." "I have to go, Lena. I don't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice. You're choosing to go. Own that at least. What do you want from me? You want me to throw away my career? Let everything I've worked for collapse? Would that make you happy? No. I want you to find a way to do both. To be a person who can handle professional crisis without completely abandoning his personal life. But that requires actually trying instead of defaulting to the easiest option. Going to Tokyo isn't the easy option. It is for you. Work is always the easy option. It's concrete, solvable. You can control it. Being here with me, doing the messy work of staying present when you're stressed, that's hard. That requires vulnerability and trust and all the things you're still terrified of. She was right. Of course she was right. But knowing she was right didn't change the fact that his phone was buzzing with messages from investors, and his flight was boarding in 90 minutes, and every second he stood here arguing was a second he wasn't fixing the crisis. I'm sorry, he said. I know this isn't what you need, but I have to go. When I get back, don't. Lena held up a hand. Don't make promises about when you get back. Don't tell me we'll talk later. Don't do the thing where you placate me with future intentions while ignoring present actions. So what do you want me to do? I want you to choose, really choose. Not try to have it both ways, not promise me you'll be different while acting exactly the same. I'm choosing to handle my responsibilities. That's not abandonment. That's being an adult. No, Ethan, that's being a coward. Hiding behind responsibility and duty and all the other noble-sounding words you use to avoid the scary work of actually being in relationship with me. The accusation stung because it was true, because he was standing there with his luggage and his excuses and his carefully rationalized reasons for why work had to come first, and they both knew what he was really doing, running, just like Marcus said, just like he always did when things got too real. I have to go, he said again, because he didn't know what else to say. Lena nodded slowly. Yeah, you do. That's the problem. He left her standing in the living room, got in the car service that was already waiting, sat in traffic to JFK while his phone blew up with work messages, and his chest felt like it was caving in. The flight to Tokyo was 14 hours. Ethan spent most of it staring at the darkness outside the window, running through scenarios and strategies and negotiation tactics, anything to avoid thinking about Lena's face. The way she'd looked at him like she was watching him choose his company over her in real time, because that's exactly what he'd done. He landed in Tokyo at 1 in the afternoon local time, went straight to the hotel to shower and change, then headed to Chen Industries headquarters with a proposal he'd outlined somewhere over the Pacific. The meeting was tense. Chen was professional but cold. Ethan presented his case, penalty clauses, extended timelines, additional oversight guarantees. Everything he could think of to salvage the partnership. Chen listened, asked pointed questions, made no promises. I will discuss with my board, he said finally. We will be in touch. When? When we are ready. Patience, Mr. Voss. You Americans are always rushing. Some things require consideration. Ethan wanted to argue that they didn't have time for consideration, that every day the deal stayed dead was another day of hemorrhaging credibility and investor confidence. But he bit his tongue and nodded and thanked Chen for his time. Back at the hotel, he called David for an update. The stock had dropped 6% on news of the failed merger. 2 other investors were asking questions about risk management. The board wanted a full report by Friday. How'd it go with Chen? David asked. Could have been worse. He's thinking about it. That's better than a hard no. Barely. You okay? You sound exhausted. I'm fine. Ethan. What? You don't have to be fine all the time. It's okay to admit this sucks. Admitting it doesn't fix anything. No, but pretending you're invincible doesn't help either. When's the last time you slept? Ethan couldn't remember. I'll sleep when this is handled. That's not sustainable. It's temporary. Once we get Chen back on board, things will stabilize. And if we don't get Chen back, we will. We have to. He ended the call and sat in the hotel room staring at his phone. 3 missed calls from Lena. No voicemails. 1 text from this morning that just said, I hope your meeting went okay. The considerate message somehow made it worse. She was being kind while he was being exactly the person he'd promised not to be. He should call her, should try to explain, should at least acknowledge that he'd screwed up the exit and the entire conversation before he left. Instead, he opened his laptop and started working on the board report. Easier to focus on something fixable. The next 2 days blurred together. More meetings, more negotiations. Chen remained non-committal but hadn't entirely closed the door. Ethan operated on coffee and room service and 3-hour nights of fitful sleep, sent updates to David and the board, ignored the growing stack of missed calls and unanswered texts from Lena. On Thursday night, Friday morning in New York, his phone rang at 2 a.m. with Marcus's name on the screen. "What?" Ethan answered, groggy and disoriented. "You need to call your wife." "I will, when I have time." "Make time. Now." "She showed up at our place tonight after her gallery thing. She was, Ethan, she was a mess, crying, talking about how she can't do this anymore. How you promised to change, and the first time you were tested, you proved it was all bullshit." Ethan sat up, suddenly wide awake. "What gallery thing?" Silence. Then, carefully, "The exhibition. The one you were supposed to attend, where she was showing her paintings for the first time in 2 years. The realization hit him like ice water. Thursday. Her show was Thursday. He'd known that, had it on his calendar, had promised he'd be there, and he'd completely forgotten. "I didn't," his voice cracked. "I lost track of days, the time difference. I didn't realize." "Yeah, well, she realized. She realized you weren't there, that you didn't call, that you chose a business trip over supporting her during something that terrified her. So call her, right now, before this gets worse." Marcus hung up. Ethan stared at his phone, his hands shaking slightly, pulled up Lena's contact, hit call. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. Sent a text. "Lena, I'm so sorry. I forgot about the show. The time zone confusion. That's not an excuse. I should have been there. Please call me." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then nothing. He tried calling again, and again, and again until he realized she'd silenced his number because the calls were going straight to voicemail now. Ethan sat in the dark hotel room halfway around the world from his wife, holding a phone that wouldn't connect him to her, and felt the full weight of what he'd done. Not just missing the show. That was bad enough. But the pattern, the choosing, the proof that every promise he'd made was hollow the second it became inconvenient. He'd told her he'd changed, that he'd choose her, that work wouldn't always win. And then the first real test had arrived, and he'd failed it completely, spectacularly, in exactly the way she'd predicted. His phone buzzed with an email. Chen Industries. Subject line, Partnership Continuation. Ethan opened it with numb fingers, scanning the formal language. They were willing to reconsider. New terms, stricter oversight, but willing to move forward. He'd won. Saved the merger, salvaged his company's reputation and probably his job. And sitting alone in a Tokyo hotel room at 2 in the morning, unable to reach his wife, knowing he'd just destroyed the most important thing in his life to save the thing that mattered least. The victory tasted like ashes. Ethan booked a flight home 6 hours later. He sent the email to Chen confirming the revised terms, forwarded everything to David with instructions to handle the final negotiations, and told the board he had a personal emergency that couldn't wait. Jenkins would probably use it as ammunition. The CFO would have questions. He didn't care. For once in his life, the company could manage without him for a few days. It had to. The flight back felt 3 times longer than the one out. Ethan couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on work, couldn't do anything except replay the past week in excruciating detail. Every moment where he'd chosen wrong. Every time he'd reverted to the old patterns. Every promise he'd broken without even noticing until it was too late. He'd thought the hard part was admitting he had a problem. Turns out the hard part was actually changing. Actually choosing differently when every instinct and years of conditioning pushed him toward the familiar fortress of control and work and emotional distance. He landed at JFK Saturday morning, exhausted and wired and terrified of what he'd find when he got home. Went straight from the airport to the penthouse without stopping to change or shower or prepare anything resembling a coherent apology. The penthouse was quiet when he entered. Not empty quiet. Lena's keys were on the console table, her bag on the chair, but the kind of quiet that felt intentional, like she was there but not interested in announcing her presence. He found her in the living room, curled in the corner of the couch, with a book she wasn't reading. She looked up when he came in, and her face was carefully neutral. No anger, no warmth, just nothing. Somehow that was worse than any reaction he'd imagined. "You're back," she said flatly. "I'm back. Lena, I'm so sorry. About the show. about leaving the way I did, about all of it. Are you? She set down the book. Because you've apologized before. You're very good at apologizing. It's the actual changing part you seem to struggle with. I know. You're right. I failed the test. The first real crisis, and I defaulted to exactly the behavior I promised to stop. Not just defaulted. You chose it, consciously. I gave you the opportunity to stay, to find another way. And you picked the company. Because I was scared. The merger was collapsing and the board was questioning my leadership, and I panicked. Fell back into old patterns because they felt safe. And I wasn't safe. We weren't safe. No, you are terrifying in a completely different way. Work I know how to handle. Crisis management, negotiations, board politics. There are rules, playbooks. But this? Us? There's no manual for how to be vulnerable and present and honest when everything feels like it's falling apart. Lena pulled her knees up to her chest. So work wins. Like it always does. Because it's easier. It's not easier. It's just familiar. I've spent 20 years learning how to win at business. I've spent 2 weeks learning how to be an actual partner in my marriage. And the second things got hard, I reached for the thing I know how to do instead of the thing I'm still figuring out. That's a very eloquent way of saying you gave up on us. I didn't give up. You got on a plane, Ethan. You left. You stopped answering my calls. You forgot about the most important night of my life in 2 years because you were too busy saving a deal that could have been handled by literally anyone else on your team. Her voice cracked slightly. You proved that when it matters, when you have to actually sacrifice something you care about to choose me, you won't do it. The truth of it sat between them, ugly and undeniable. You're right, Ethan said, about all of it. I don't have an excuse. I don't have a justification that makes it okay. I screwed up, massively, and I understand if you can't forgive that. It's not about forgiving. I can forgive almost anything if I believe the person is actually trying to change. But you're not changing, Ethan. You're performing change when it's convenient and reverting the second it gets difficult. And I can't... She stopped, collected herself. I can't live like this, waiting for the next crisis to prove you haven't really changed at all. So what are you saying? Lena stood, moved to the window, looked out at the city the way he'd spent so many hours doing. I'm saying I need you to decide what you actually want, not what you think you should want, not what sounds good in the moment, what you truly want when you're forced to choose between the company and me. I want you. I want us. Do you? Because your actions say something different. Your actions say you want to keep both, but only invest in one. You want me to be here, waiting, understanding, endlessly patient while you prioritize everything else. And maybe that worked when I didn't know any better, when I was too busy disappearing to notice. But I see it now. I see exactly what I am to you. What do you think you are to me? A nice idea. A comfort. Something you appreciate having, but not enough to actually fight for when it costs you something. The words hit like bullets. Ethan moved closer, desperate to make her understand. That's not true. You're everything to me. The most important... Stop. She held up a hand. Don't tell me I'm the most important thing while proving I'm not. Words are cheap, Ethan. They always have been with you. It's easy to say you love me, that you choose me, that you'll change. It's a lot harder to actually demonstrate it when there's a real cost. I'm here now. I came back. After you got what you wanted in Tokyo, after you saved the merger, you didn't come back for me. You came back because your work there was done, and now you can afford to address the personal crisis you created. She was right. Of course she was right. He'd finished the negotiations, secured Chen's tentative agreement, handled the board situation. And only then, only after his professional responsibilities were managed, had he gotten on a plane. What do you want me to do? The question came out raw. Tell me what would make this right, and I'll do it. I want you to want to do it, not because I'm forcing you, not because you're scared of losing me, but because you genuinely value our relationship enough to sacrifice other things for it. And I don't think you're capable of that. Not really. I am. I swear Your show was Thursday night, Lena interrupted. Do you know what that was like? Standing in that gallery, watching the door, telling myself you'd show up any minute, making excuses to Jess and the others about how you were probably just running late, definitely coming, you promised. and then realizing as the night went on that you weren't coming, that you'd forgotten, that I was so unimportant in the grand scheme of your priorities that you couldn't even remember the one thing I'd asked you to be there for. Eat back, eat, but down. Her voice broke completely, and Ethan felt something crack in his chest. I was so proud of those paintings, she continued, so terrified and proud and desperate for you to see them, to see me putting myself back together, and you couldn't be bothered to show up. Lena, do you know what Jess said when it became obvious you weren't coming? She said, I told you, he hasn't changed. Men like him don't change. And I defended you. Even then, standing there humiliated, I defended you, told her you were dealing with a crisis, that you loved me, that this was unusual. And she looked at me with so much pity and said, Lena, you're describing your entire marriage. This isn't unusual. This is who he is. The room felt too small suddenly, too airless. Ethan couldn't breathe properly. She's wrong, he managed. I can change. I am changing. Are you? Or are you just learning to say the right things between crises? Because from where I'm standing, nothing's actually different. You're still the same person who chooses work over me every single time it matters. That's not fair. I took time off. I went to that farmer's market. I played basketball. I did all the things we talked about. For 2 weeks. You managed to prioritize us for 2 whole weeks before the first challenge appeared and you immediately reverted. That's not change, Ethan. That's a honeymoon period. Real change means choosing differently even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She was destroying him with logic and truth, and he had no defense because she was completely right. I don't know how to be what you need, he admitted. I don't know how to be the person who can handle both, who doesn't panic and retreat when work explodes. I'm trying, but I keep failing. Then maybe we need to accept that trying isn't enough. Lena's voice went very quiet. Maybe we need to accept that we're incompatible in some fundamental way that all the love and good intentions in the world can't fix. Don't say that. Why not? It might be true. You need someone who can be okay with always coming second to your career. And I need someone who can actually show up for me consistently. Those might be mutually exclusive needs. Ethan felt panic rising in his throat. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. He'd come home, he'd apologized, they were supposed to figure it out together. Not this. Not her giving up. I don't accept that, he said. I don't accept that we're just incompatible and that's it. We love each other. That has to count for something. Love isn't enough if the behavior doesn't change. I can love you and still recognize that this is destroying me, that I'm becoming smaller and sadder and more invisible trying to fit into the tiny spaces you leave for me between meetings. So what do we do? Lena finally turned from the window to face him fully. Her eyes were red but dry, like she'd cried herself out already and was now operating from someplace beyond tears. I think you need to figure out what you actually want your life to look like, she said, not what you think it should look like. Not what your father wanted, or what the board expects, or what looks impressive from the outside. What you genuinely want. And then decide if there's room for me in that vision in a real way, not just as an accessory. You're not an accessory. Then what am I? Really? Not in theory. In practice. When you plan your week, your month, your year, where do I fit? Am I an afterthought you'll get to if there's time? Am I the thing you sacrifice first when something more important comes up? Or am I actually a priority you protect and plan around? Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, because the honest answer was complicated and unflattering and exactly what she'd just described. That's what I thought, Lena said softly. Give me a chance to fix this, please. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. I can't tell you what to do. That's the whole problem. I can't force you to want to choose me. You have to want it yourself. And I don't think you do. Not enough. I do want you want to have me. That's different from wanting to choose me. You want me here, waiting, being understanding, making you feel like you're a good person who has a successful marriage. But you don't want to do the actual work of prioritizing me when it conflicts with something else you want more. The truth of it was devastating because it was so accurate. He did want both. Wanted Lena and wanted his career and wanted to be the person who could manage both perfectly. But when forced to choose, when the rubber actually met the road, he chose work. Every time. I can learn, he said desperately. I can get better at choosing, at balancing, at being present. Can you? Or are you just going to keep promising that until the next crisis proves you can't? I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I want to try. I want to keep trying, even if I keep failing, because the alternative is losing you and I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose you, Lena. You're the only real thing in my life. Everything else is just noise and performance and trying to prove something that doesn't matter. You're what matters. You're all that matters. If that were true, you would have stayed, or called, or remembered my show. If I was truly all that mattered, your actions would reflect that. I was scared. The board was talking about removing me. Jenkins was using the merger collapse to question my competence. Everything I've built was falling apart and I panicked. And you'll panic again. Next time there's a crisis or a threat or a challenge to your position, you'll panic and revert, and I'll be right back here wondering why I'm not enough to fight for. You are enough. You're more than enough. Then prove it. Lena moved away from the window, grabbed her bag. Not with words, not with apologies or promises or grand gestures, with consistent, sustained action over time. Show me that I actually matter by treating me like I matter, every day, not just when it's convenient. Where are you going? To Jess's. I need space to think, to figure out what I actually want instead of just reacting to what you do or don't do. Panic spiked hard. Don't leave, please. We can talk through this, figure it out together. We've been talking for weeks, Ethan, and the second we stopped talking and started doing, you failed. I need to think about whether I believe you can actually change or if I'm just setting myself up for more disappointment. How long? I don't know. A few days. A week. However long it takes to get clear on what I need and whether you're capable of providing it. She walked past him toward the door. Every instinct screamed at him to stop her, to argue, to do something to prevent her from leaving. But he'd already done enough damage, already pushed and demanded and tried to control the situation when what she clearly needed was space. Lena, he said as she reached the door. She paused, didn't turn around. I love you. I know I'm terrible at showing it. I know I've failed you in almost every way that matters. But I do love you, more than I know how to express. I know you do. Her voice was barely audible. I just don't know if that's enough anymore. The door closed behind her with the same soft click it had made 3 weeks ago when she left for her reunion. But this time felt different, more final, like something essential had broken that might not be fixable. Ethan stood alone in the penthouse for a long time, the silence pressing against him like a physical weight. Then he moved to the office, to the window still covered in sticky notes from that first night of honesty and hope. Fight for Us was the last one he'd written, the one at the bottom. He'd failed. Spectacularly. In every way that mattered. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Ethan answered, voice hollow. She left. I know, she called Diane on her way over. How bad was it? Bad. She thinks I can't change, that I'll keep choosing work over her no matter what I promise. Can you prove her wrong? I don't know. Every time I think I've figured it out, I fail the test. Then maybe stop treating it like a test. Stop trying to pass or fail. Just be different. Actually be the person you want to be instead of trying to prove you can be that person. I don't understand the difference. The difference is motivation. Right now you're changing because you're afraid of losing her. Fear is a terrible foundation. You need to change because you actually want a different life, because you recognize that the way you've been living is hollow and unsustainable and not who you want to be at your core. Ethan pressed his forehead against the cool glass. I don't know who I want to be. I've spent so long being Ethan Voss, CEO, master of control, that I don't know who I am without that. Then figure it out. Take the time she's giving you and actually do the work. Not for her, for you. Because even if she doesn't come back, you need to be a different person. For yourself. They talked for a few more minutes before Marcus had to go. Ethan ended the call and stood in the office as afternoon light slanted through the sticky notes, casting colored shadows on the floor. His laptop was still on the desk, email notifications piling up, work that needed attention. The familiar pull of responsibility and control and proving his worth through productivity. He closed the laptop without opening it. For the first time in his adult life, Ethan Voss didn't know what to do next. Didn't have a strategy or a plan or a way forward. Just the crushing realization that he'd built his entire identity on being successful at the wrong things. He spent the rest of Saturday and most of Sunday doing nothing productive. Didn't answer work emails, didn't call investors, just sat in the penthouse trying to figure out what his life looked like if it wasn't built entirely around proving his worth through professional achievement. On Monday morning, he called Claire. "Clear my calendar for the next 2 weeks," he said. 2 weeks? Ethan, you have the board meeting Thursday and David can handle it. And if the board has a problem with that, they can fire me. I'm taking time off. Are you okay? You sound... I'm not okay. But I will be. Just clear the calendar. Everything. And Claire? Yes? Thank you for putting up with me for 5 years. I know I'm not an easy person to work for. You're... Wow. Okay. You're welcome. Are you sure you're all right? Getting there. He ended the call and made another one. The number for a therapist David's wife had recommended months ago when Ethan had mentioned offhand that he felt disconnected from everything that wasn't work. The receptionist answered. Ethan made an appointment for Wednesday afternoon. First available slot, then he called Marcus. "Remember how you said I needed to figure out who I want to be?" "Yeah. I think I need help with that. Professional help. Do you know any good therapists?" "I do. Let me text you a name. I'm proud of you, man." "Don't be proud yet. I haven't actually changed anything. I've just admitted I need to." That's the first step, the hardest step. Ethan wasn't sure he believed that. The hardest step seemed like all the ones that came after, the daily choice to be different, to choose differently, to build a life that wasn't just about winning at any cost. He spent Tuesday painting the guest bedroom, not because it needed painting, but because he needed something physical to do with his hands that wasn't work. Something mindless that let his brain process without the constant pressure to produce and achieve. Wednesday, he went to therapy, sat in a comfortable chair across from a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who asked him questions about his childhood and his father and his definition of success that made him deeply uncomfortable. "Tell me about your father," she said. "He was successful, built a company from nothing, very driven, very focused." "And your relationship with him?" "Professional. He didn't really do emotions or personal connection. He measured love in achievements. If I succeeded, he was proud. If I failed, I was invisible." "And you learned from that?" "I learned that productivity equals worth, that feelings are weaknesses, that the only thing that matters is results." "Do you still believe that?" Ethan thought about Lena's paintings, Marcus's friendship, the basketball game, all the things in his life that didn't produce measurable results, but made him feel human. "No," he said slowly, "but I don't know how to live any other way." "Then we have work to do." They talked for the full hour. Dr. Chen gave him homework. Journal about what he actually wants versus what he thinks he should want. Notice when he defaults to work as a coping mechanism. Practice sitting with discomfort instead of immediately trying to fix or control it. It sounded impossible. He told her he'd try. Thursday was the board meeting he didn't attend. He knew Jenkins would use his absence as ammunition, knew there would be consequences. But David called after to report that it had gone fine, that the board accepted his leave of absence, that the company would survive 2 weeks without him at the helm. "You sure you're okay?" David asked. "Working on it." "Good, take your time, we've got this." Friday morning, Ethan's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He almost didn't answer, then decided against ignoring unknown calls. "Hello? Mr. Voss, this is Gallery 6 downtown. We have a piece here that Lena Voss indicated you might want to collect." His heart jumped. "What piece?" "One of her paintings from the exhibition last week. It didn't sell, and she mentioned you might want it. Should I hold it for you?" "Yes, I'll be there in an hour." He threw on clothes and drove downtown to the small gallery in the village. The owner, a woman in her 60s with purple glasses, showed him to where Lena's 3 paintings hung. 2 had red dots beside them. Sold. The third, an abstract piece in blues and greens with slashes of crimson, had no dot. Ethan stood in front of it and felt something crack open in his chest. It was chaos and movement and pain and hope all at once. You could see the struggle in the brushstrokes, the anger, the fear, the desperate reaching towards something better. It was Lana, raw and honest and putting herself on canvas in a way that was terrifying and beautiful. "This one?" the owner asked. "This one." He paid for it, arranged delivery, and was leaving when the owner said, She's very talented, your wife. You should be proud. I am. I just haven't been very good at showing it. Well, now's your chance. Back home, Ethan cleared space in the living room, took down the neutral landscape the designer had selected and leaned it against the wall. When Lena's painting was delivered that afternoon, he hung it in the place of honor above the couch. It looked insane against the gray and chrome aesthetic, clashed with everything, disrupted the careful coordination. It was perfect. He took a picture, sent it to Lena with a simple message. I'm sorry I missed seeing this in the gallery. It's stunning. You're stunning. I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then nothing. He tried not to spiral, tried to sit with the discomfort like Dr. Chen had suggested, tried to focus on the work he was doing on himself rather than whether it would be enough to bring Lena back. Saturday he played basketball. The bearded guy recognized him, asked where he'd been. Life got complicated, Ethan said. It does that. You back for good now? Trying to be. They played for 2 hours. Ethan was less rusty this time, his body remembering faster. He made a three-pointer that felt smooth and right, and one of the younger guys gave him props. After sitting on the bleachers drinking water, the bearded guy said, Whatever's going on, basketball won't fix it, but it helps. Showing up for yourself helps. Thanks. I think I'm starting to figure that out. Sunday morning, Lena called. Ethan answered on the first ring. Hi. Hi. She sounded tired but not angry. I saw the painting in the living room. You came by? I needed to pick up some things. You weren't home. I was at therapy. Silence. You're seeing a therapist? Started this week. Trying to figure out who I am when I'm not just working. It's hard, uncomfortable, but necessary. That's good, really good. How are you? How's Jess's place? Crowded. She has 3 roommates and a very loud cat, but it's been good having space to think. And have you thought about things? Yeah, a lot. About us. About what I need. About whether you're capable of giving that. And? Lena took a breath. And I don't know yet. I need to see sustained change over time, not just a week or 2 of you trying hard. Actual consistent behavior that shows you've internalized different priorities. That's fair. I can do that. I want to do that. Even if it costs you professionally? Even if the board removes you, or Jenkins wins, or the company suffers? Even then, I talked to David, asked him to take over as acting CEO for the next 2 months. I'm stepping back, really stepping back, not delegating while secretly micromanaging. Actual stepping back, like, Ethan, I know it sounds extreme. Jenkins certainly thinks so, but I can't keep trying to do both at the level I've been doing both. Something has to give. And I'd rather it be the company than us, than you. What if you resent me for it later? What if you give up your career and then 5 years from now you're bitter and we end up right back here? Then we deal with that when it comes. But right now, in this moment, I'm choosing differently. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. And I'm choosing the person I want to be over the person I've been. More silence. He could hear her breathing on the other end. I'm scared, she said finally. Me too. What if it's not enough? What if you change and it's still broken? Then at least we tried. At least we fought for it instead of letting it die quietly. But I don't think it's broken beyond repair. I think we're just 2 imperfect people learning how to be honest with each other. That takes time. I want to believe you. Then believe me. Or don't. Watch what I do instead of listening to what I say. Give me time to prove through action that I'm serious this time. How much time? However long you need. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. Really here. Not distracted or half present or waiting for the next crisis. Just here. Lena was quiet for so long he thought she'd hung up. Then she said, Can I come home? Relief flooded through him. Yes, please. I need ground rules, though. Anything. Weekly check-ins, non-negotiable, where we actually talk about how we're feeling and what's working and what's not. No avoiding uncomfortable conversations. Done. And if you revert, if you start choosing work over us again, I need you to own it immediately. No excuses or justifications. Just acknowledgement and adjustment. I can do that. And I need my own life back. My studio, my friends, my teaching workshops. I need to be Lena who's married to you, not just your wife. You should be that. You always should have been that. Okay. He heard rustling, like she was gathering things. I'll be there in an hour. I'll be here. She arrived 90 minutes later, looking exhausted and beautiful and uncertain. Ethan met her at the door, took her bag, let her set the pace. They stood in the entryway for a moment, neither quite knowing what to do next. The painting looks good, she said finally. Really good. It's incredible. You're incredible. I'm sorry I missed the show. I know. I'm still hurt about it, but I appreciate that you got it anyway, that you made space for it here. I'm making space for a lot of things. Your work belongs in our home, front and center, not hidden away. She moved to the living room, looking at how the painting transformed the carefully controlled space. It clashes with everything. Good. This place needed chaos. Lena almost smiled. What else have you been doing while I was gone? Therapy, basketball, painting the guest room for no reason, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not working. And I'm a mess, but a mess who's trying, a mess who wants to be better. We're both messes. Yeah, we are. But maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't have to be perfect, just honest. She sat on the couch, looked up at her painting. I'm still scared this won't work. Ethan sat beside her, careful to leave space she could close or keep. I am too, but I'd rather be scared and trying than comfortable and dying slowly. That's very poetic for you. I've been journaling, Dr. Chen's orders. It's terrible, but occasionally something decent comes out. Can I read it? Absolutely not. It's mortifyingly bad. She laughed, and the sound loosened something in his chest. I missed you, she said. I missed you too, so much. Every day you were gone, I kept thinking of things I wanted to tell you, about therapy or basketball or stupid observations about how weird it is to have free time. You can tell me now. Yeah? Yeah, we have time. They talked into the evening, not about the big crisis or the merger or the board, just small things. Lena told him about Jess's terrible cat and the 3 roommates who all seemed to be in different bands. Ethan told her about Dr. Chen and the homework and how uncomfortable it was to sit with feelings instead of immediately trying to fix everything. They ordered dinner from the Thai place, watched a movie neither of them had seen before, fell asleep on the couch together without meaning to, wrapped around each other in a way that felt more honest than anything they'd done in years. When Ethan woke at 3 in the morning, Lena was still there, still real, still choosing to stay. He extracted himself carefully, moved to the window. The city spread below, indifferent and glittering. He used to stand here feeling like he owned a piece of it. Now he just felt grateful to be one small person in it, learning how to be human, learning how to love better. Can't sleep? Lena's voice came from behind him. He turned. She was sitting up, hair a disaster, eyes soft with sleep. Just thinking. About how close I came to losing everything that matters. About how lucky I am that you're still willing to try. She stood, came to join him at the window. We're going to mess up, both of us, multiple times. I know. I'm going to get frustrated when you work late. You're going to get stressed when I need space. We're going to have terrible fights and hurt each other without meaning to. Probably. And we'll have to keep choosing each other, over and over, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding carefully like she was something precious he'd almost broken. I love you, he said into her hair. The real you. The messy, complicated, talented, fierce version who calls me out when I'm being an idiot. I love you too, the version who's trying, who fails and tries again, who's learning to be human instead of perfect. They stood there as the city woke up around them, 2 imperfect people building something fragile and real. It wasn't fixed, wasn't guaranteed, but it was honest. And maybe that was enough. Maybe honest and trying was better than perfect and dying. Maybe the work of love wasn't about getting it right every time. It was about showing up consistently, choosing vulnerability over control, being willing to fail and learn and try again. 3 months later, Ethan stood in a different gallery watching Lena talk to a collector about her latest series. She was animated, confident, fully herself in a way that made his chest tight with pride. He He hung back, not interfering, just present, supporting. The collector left with a promise to think about purchasing. Lena turned to find Ethan and broke into a smile. Hey. Hey yourself, that looked like it went well. She's interested, wants to see more work before committing. She'd be lucky to have it. Your work is extraordinary. You're biased. I'm honest. There's a difference. They left the gallery together, walked through the city with no particular destination. It was a Thursday. Ethan had a board meeting tomorrow, but he'd prepared and delegated and trusted his team to handle most of it. Tonight was theirs. Where do you want to eat? He asked. That new Korean place? The one Jess recommended? Perfect. They walked in comfortable silence, hands linked, navigating foot traffic and evening chaos. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It could wait. Everything could wait. Lena noticed. You can check it. I trust you. I know, but it's not important. You're important. This is important. She squeezed his hand. They kept walking. Later, over Korean barbecue and too much soju, Lena said, Do you ever regret it, stepping back from work? No. Do you regret staying? No, but I worry sometimes that you'll wake up one day and resent the sacrifices you made. I don't see them as sacrifices. I see them as corrections, getting my priorities straight, becoming the person I actually want to be instead of the person I thought I had to be. That's very therapy of you. Dr. Chen would be proud. How is therapy going? Hard. Good. I'm learning a lot about why I default to control and perfectionism. Daddy issues, mostly. Very cliché. She laughed. We're all clichés on some level. True. How's the teaching going? Exhausting, rewarding. I love it, though. Seeing people discover painting for the first time, helping them find their voice. You're good at it, at seeing people. It's a gift. You're getting sentimental in your old age. I'm embracing my feelings. It's character growth. They finished dinner, walked home through streets that had become familiar in a new way. Not the city Ethan moved through on autopilot between work and home. The city he actually lived in, with Lena, building a life that wasn't about success or control, but about connection and honesty and showing up for each other. Back at the penthouse, Lena went to her studio to work on a new piece. Ethan settled in the living room with a book, actual fiction, not business theory, and listened to the sounds of her painting. Brush on canvas, the occasional frustrated sigh, music playing low. His phone buzzed again. David. He answered. What's up? Quick question about tomorrow's presentation. Should I lead with the quarterly numbers or the expansion strategy? What's your instinct? Numbers. Show strength before discussing growth. Then do that. Trust yourself. You sure? Jenkins will probably push back. Let him. You've got this. Anything else? No, that's it. Thanks. No problem. See you tomorrow. Simple. Easy. Trusting his team to handle things without his constant oversight. It had taken months to get here, to let go without feeling like everything would collapse in his absence. But they were fine. Better than fine. Thriving. And so was he. Lena appeared in the doorway, paint on her hands and a streak across her cheek. I'm stuck. Can you look at something? Of course. He followed her to the studio, looked at the canvas where she'd been working, lots of yellow and orange, shapes that might have been figures or might have been abstract. What do you see? She asked. Movement, energy. Something reaching toward something else. Is it working? I think so. But what do you want it to say? I don't know yet. That's the problem. Then keep painting until you figure it out. Trust the process. She looked at him. When did you become wise about art? I've been listening, learning, trying to understand the things that matter to you. It's working. She kissed him, leaving paint on his shirt. Thank you. For what? Being here. Actually being here. Not just physically, but present, engaged, seeing me. That's the bare minimum of being married to you. It wasn't always, but it is now. Later, lying in bed with Lena curled against him, Ethan thought about the man he'd been 6 months ago. The Ice King, the control freak, the person who'd almost destroyed his marriage because he was too afraid to be vulnerable. That person felt like a stranger now, someone he'd been performing for so long he'd forgotten it was a performance. This version, imperfect, uncertain, still learning, felt more real, more true. Ethan? Lena's voice was sleepy. Yeah? I'm glad you stayed. When I asked you to choose, I'm glad you chose us. I'm glad you let me, that you gave me another chance. Multiple chances. I'm trying not to need more. You'll need more. We both will. That's okay. That's what marriage is. Choosing each other over and over, failing and trying again, being human together. I can do that. I want to do that. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I love our life. The messy, imperfect, still figuring it out version. It's better than the perfect image we were trying to maintain. Yeah, it really is. They fell asleep like that. Two people who'd almost lost each other learning daily how to stay found. It wasn't perfect. They still fought sometimes, still hurt each other in small ways. Still had to work at being honest and present and choosing each other when it would be easier not to. But they were doing the work, together. And that made all the difference, because love wasn't about never failing. It was about failing and showing up anyway. About being brave enough to be seen, to be vulnerable, to admit when you're wrong and try to do better. It was about choosing truth over comfort, connection over control, presence over perfection. And every day, in small and large ways, Ethan Voss was learning to choose differently, learning to choose love.